31. I will, Madeline, can we call to the order? Can you please do the roll call?
Absolutely. President Abbas,
Present.
Vice President Martin,
Here.
Alder Carter, Alder Bennett, Alder Harrington McKinney, Alder Heck,
Here.
Alder Lemmer,
Here.
Alder Wehelier,
Here.
Thank you very much. I believe, Madeline, we have a quorum. We have 5 members. Moving forward is approval of the minute. Can I have a motion for approval for last month and month before last month, July 16th and June 15th minutes?
I will move approval of minutes from those two aforementioned meetings.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is moved and seconded. Thank you very much. We have agenda item number 1, public comments. Madeline, is anybody, I see on agenda item number 2, a lot of public comments. Is anybody registered for number 1?
At this time, there is no one registered for item number 1. All registrants are for item number 2.
Thank you very much. Moving forward, disclosures and recusal. Any member of the committee want to disclose or recuse? This is an opportunity to say recuse yourself. I do not see any hand raised, so thank you very much. Now we move to agenda item. As we have numbers of participants for agenda item number 2, if it's a will of the body, I would like to take agenda item number 3, 4, and 5 first for updates. So then staff can go if they wish, and then we can come back on agenda item number 2. Can I have a motion to move rest of the agenda item first for discussion?
I will move item 2. Sorry. You said 3 first, correct? Sorry.
Yeah. Agenda item table and agenda item 2.
Do we need? Okay. Then I move discussion on agenda item 3.
I think, President Abbas, you can do it by unanimous consent unless anyone objects.
Yeah, we can do unanimous consent. You're right. If there is no objection, we will take agenda item number 3, 4, and 5 first. And no, Vice President Martin, you can move the consent motion. Just move the motion.
I'll move.
Can we have a second?
Second.
It's moved in second. I don't see any objection. All right, we will move to update on American agenda item number 3, file number 66365, American Rescue Plan Act update. Madam May, floor is yours.
Thank you, President Abbas. I want to start by saying thank you to the members of the council for approving the framework on the American Rescue Plan funding, and mostly wanted to provide for you all an update on sort of where we go from here in terms of process. As you know, there is a number of items that you approved as a part of that resolution that will be moving forward. There's also a report that will be coming to you at our next full council meeting. There's a number of items that will be in the 22 budget, and there's a number of items that are yet to be worked on in terms of issuing an RFP or other process to disperse the funds. But I did want to ask our new budget director, Christine Coe, to just provide a little bit of an update on the process that staff are going through. As you might expect, there is a fair amount of reporting that needs to happen to the federal government, and so staff are working hard on that. So I'm going to turn it over to Christine for that update, and then she and I, and I'm sure, I think Dave Schmidtke is also on the call, would be happy to answer questions after that update. Christine, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks for that introduction, Mayor, and thank you to the Council for having me here today. As our Mayor mentioned, my name is Christine Ko, and I am the Budget and Program Evaluation Manager. I started just over 2 months ago, and I'm diving into the ARPA planning process. Can I share my screen? I have a few slides prepared for you today.
You should be able to share. There you go.
Thank you. All right, so I have a few plans to walk through updates on the use of the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. I'll talk about our strategies for engaging the public, including developing a website and hosting 2 virtual town halls at the end of the month. Some of the reporting and metrics requirements, including our progress on preparing a report to the Council on 2021 allocations, as well as upcoming federal guidelines, and our timeline and next steps. So first, I'm very pleased to announce that our ARPA website launched today. You can find it at www.cityofmadison.com/ARPA. Our goal is to provide one place to find clear and accessible information about all of the funding and proposals. So to the right on the slide, you can see a screenshot of what the webpage looks like. At the very top, we have a announcement for the town halls and information on how the public can view them through the live stream. We also have a quick summary of the proposals and plan that was approved by the City Council. And if you scroll down, you'll find a section about accountability and transparency, where we'll be publishing reports and data. And we also plan on adding some data visualizations, such as a story map to show where geographically across the city we are investing. So right now, this is the information right now is being translated. So we plan to have this up in multiple languages, and we ask that the Council and others help us promote this, share the URL on your social media, newsletters, and other channels, and help get the word out. The second way that we're engaging the public is through a series of virtual town halls. We currently have 2 scheduled, one for next Thursday, July 22nd at 4:30, and then on Tuesday, July 27th at 4 p.m. The 2 sessions will cover the same material and will be recorded, and we'll post those recordings on the website. So if you can't attend live, you'll have other opportunities to view the content. And again, the live stream links are live on the website, so there's no registration required, and you can access it directly through the website. Our planned agenda is to talk through Budget 101. So give the folks context about how Madison develops its annual budget, and then talk specifically about the 2022 budget planning process and some financial challenges caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. And then we'll spend more time talking specifically about the role of ARPA in funding recovery, the priority strategies, and then talk through some of the proposals that were part of the resolution voted on by the Council. We'll also have participant surveys to understand public priorities for ARPA funds and have some public engagement on the topic as well. The website has a link to a SurveyMonkey where you can submit questions in advance. So again, we request your help in promoting the town halls and sharing the live stream links. The Council is also welcome to submit your own questions in advance of the meeting, and we'll try to answer as many of them in the presentation as possible. And we'll think about producing FAQs or other documents to address both general questions about the budget process as well as specifics about ARPA funding. So then I wanted to provide a brief update about reporting and metrics. The Council had requested a report at the next Council meeting on the 20th to describe the criteria and processes to allocate funding that was appropriated in 2021. So agency staff are working on this as we speak. The report will include details on the 16 proposals that were included for appropriation in 2021. And the template we provided staff include fields for them to specify what specifically is being paid for, whether it's a purchase service or adding to existing capital investments and capital projects. It will also detail the criteria and process for allocating funding, such as RFP processes and estimated timelines for 2021. So we expect to have this to you by that July 20th meeting. And as the mayor mentioned, there are several federal reporting deadlines coming up. For the members of the body who are part of the Finance Committee, Finance Director Dave Schmidtke reviewed some of these in the last ARPA overview. But the main report that's coming up on the horizon is the Recovery Plan Performance Report, which is due to the U.S. Treasury at the end of August. And in this report, we have to provide an executive summary about our overall strategy for funds, as well as performance metrics and our plans for collecting output and outcome measures for each of our strategies. The federal government also has a very strong focus on equity and wants to know how we are approaching and promoting equitable outcomes and providing services to disproportionately impacted communities. And that's something that our agencies are putting a lot of thought into and making sure that the funds are being directed to those communities. Beginning in October of this year, the city will be submitting quarterly reports on project status and the actual expenditures that are being made. And all of these reports will be shared on the city website and directly with the Common Council, and perhaps through the Finance Committee. So in terms of the timeline and next steps, this is just a snapshot of where we are for July and August. So on July 6th, the resolution accepting ARPA funds in 21 allocations was approved by the Common Council. And at the next council meeting on the 20th, the city will submit the report on the use of 2021 funding. On the 22nd and 27th, we'll host these virtual town halls that, again, will cover both general budget questions as well as specific information related to ARPA. And at the end of August, we will be submitting and preparing the Recovery Plan Performance Report. So really, after the initial report to the council is submitted on the 20th, that's when agencies will be able to begin implementation of programs and projects. And, we plan on sharing that information both on the web directly to the council and, continue to engage you all in this process. So that's all I have for slides today, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Christine, for a detailed presentation. I appreciate that. Any question for Christine? Alderman McKinney.
Thank you, President. Christy, thank you very much, because one of the things that I've heard over and over again is that clarity and transparency is so critically important. And I'm glad that that is built into the process, to have some matrix in terms of the distribution, the performance measures, the outcome. But what I've heard is that, the question is, will those funds get down? When I say get down, trickle down to the people or the persons and the communities most in need. And that is so critically important. And I've heard that you have a mechanism for that. So accountability, and that. So for me, that accountability is critically important to make sure there's a lot of funds that's floating out there, but are those funds reaching and impacting those individuals who are most in need? And so I'm glad that that is going to be a priority in terms of reporting, because that's the piece that I'm definitely going to be looking at. And I am very appreciative of that being high on the priority list. Thank you. I'm complete.
Thank you, Alder McKinney. Alder Heck.
Thank you, President Abbas. And thank you, Christine, for the presentation. I just wanted to verify that your slides will end up in Legistar or sent to all alders. I want to make sure that I get those dates for the community meetings and the website and start advertising those. Or that alders somehow get that information so we can put it in our blogs and other communications.
Absolutely. I will be sending out the slides immediately after, along with a direct link to the webpage that has the links to the presentation and more information about the town hall. So thank you for clarifying.
Thank you very much. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Alder Heck. Alder Bennett.
I just wanted to clarify, what forms of outreach methods are you doing to make sure that people are aware that we're having town halls?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the website just went live today, and we there's a press release that just went out to communicate the town halls. And so, we were waiting to make sure that we had all of our ducks in a row before making the announcement. So, we're reaching out through the city PIOs and other parties, and just trying to get a broad group of stakeholders to push it out through the various channels.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, definitely. Just to make sure that like folks that maybe aren't aware of or constantly check the city websites, make sure that they are knowledgeable of this information, as long as we're reaching out to stakeholders and spreading the word that way. It'll help.
Yeah, absolutely. And by having them recorded, we can also post them in case people aren't aware or they have a scheduling conflict, they'll be able to access the materials in advance as well. So hoping by having multiple strategies, we can do that robust outreach.
Alder, we'd certainly appreciate your help in getting the word out.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine, for the detailed presentation. I appreciate that. Moving forward to agenda item number 4.
President Abbas, before you move on from item 3, I did just want to re-emphasize the asks that Christine made. So to help us amplify the message on both the website and the town halls, but also to note the link for questions for the town halls and invite alders to submit there or to share that link widely with your constituents, so we can get a good sense of what information people are interested in, and address that certainly at the town halls, but also at other meetings going forward. I just really appreciate you helping us get the word out. I am confident that this money is going to be a real boon for our community, and we want to make sure that people understand what we're doing, that we're really transparent about it, and also as the opportunities come up, I would like to engage all of you in helping us get the word out about RFPs for community-based organizations and NGOs in the community. And so we're not quite there yet, but we will be before too long. And so expect us to come back and ask for help with that as well. Thank you, President Abbas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Christine, again. Moving forward to agenda item number 4, file number 66378, Wisconsin State Budget Update. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, President Abbas. I'm just going to give a small amount of context before I hand it over to Mary. As you, I'm sure, have followed in the news, the governor signed the state budget. There was a number of, in my view, problems with the budget that will impact the city. I think probably a longer list of things that didn't make it in that we really could have used help with. But nonetheless, I wanted to make sure that you all got the update. For new alders, I'm not sure that I've talked at CCEC about this before, but we do engage a contract lobbyist at the state level, and then my chief of staff, Mary Brt, also works with our legislative delegation and with the administration on issues that are of concern to us. And so the budget obviously was a big one, but there's been a number of other things recently as well. And if you all ever have concerns or questions about state policy, legislation, budget, et cetera, you should feel free to contact Mary and let her know so that we can find out information or get you updates or for things that we collectively take a position on, then we can have staff lobby as well. So just wanted to make you aware of that opportunity going forward. And so, Mary, do you want to just give a little bit of an update on where we're at with the budget and how that impacted us?
Yep. I'll keep it short. As folks read in the paper, the Republican budget found a way to accept the $2.3 billion in federal funds for schools that was at risk. And so those were supposed to be one-time COVID funds. But what they gave with one hand, they took away with the other. And so overall, schools aren't going to be doing all that much better under the budget, but the governor decided to sign it after that point. He's touting, the tax relief in the budget and broadband funds in the budget and many other small programs. Of top concern to us were two items in particular, 50% cuts to transit funding for Madison and Milwaukee. As the mayor likes to say, of all the transit systems in the whole state that received federal money, apparently only ours needed to be cut. So clearly that's problematic. We talked quite frequently to many of our legislative representatives in the governor's office about this, hoping that he could find a way to use his line item veto to restore funding, but that was not possible. And that makes sense. It's a little hard to restore funding using a line item system. But we've also asked him to examine every avenue of helping us with that whole now. And if you have ideas or thoughts about that, please give me a call, as the mayor suggested. We did get a lot of support from our community partners, University of Wisconsin, MMSD, both businesses and labor, and other folks who communicated their concerns about these cuts to the governor. The other revenue issue that was a big concern to us was the proposed cut to the property tax, to a particular type of personal property tax, which we like to call the corporate property tax cut. They were going to try and get rid of this revenue stream. The city of Madison made, I think in 2019, about $13 million off of this revenue stream, which mostly affects businesses. It doesn't affect individuals as much. So our city assessor wrote a really nice op-ed for the Wisconsin State Journal talking about this obscure issue, which actually delivers a lot of revenue to the city of Madison. And it's a growing stream of revenue. And fortunately, the governor did veto the cutting of this revenue stream. But his message around it was he wanted to perfect the bill rather than permanently discard this idea. So we have more work to do there in order to preserve this revenue stream for cities. As you all know, we don't have that many revenue streams, so it's important to preserve every one we have. Other issues in the budget or others, there's lots of small things in the budget that we're still going through to see the things that might be able to help us as a community. And one of those is, for instance, there's $19 for school mental health funds. There are 50 new beds at Mendota for juvenile mental health treatment here in our own community. There's $7 million for homelessness. And there's still things like that we need to look at a little bit more closely and see if the city can take advantage of them. I also wanted to mention that the governor last Friday night vetoed the redistricting bill, which was causing concern amongst a lot of people. And so we'll be looking forward to seeing what's going to be proposed in its place. and we'll be updating you all on what's going to be proposed in its place. And so anyways, that's my quick summary. And if anybody has questions, I'm happy to take them and also happy to discuss offline. Yes, Alder.
Thank you, Alder Haley.
Hello?
We can hear you, Alder Haley. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mary, for this. I was wondering where we can get this list of either affected or vetoed so we can know item by.
Yep, I'll send you the list. It's a rather long document, but he did issue at least 70 small vetoes. And I'll get you the page number if you wanted to see what that was. But it's a pretty thorough overall veto message. I'll send it your way.
Okay, thank you.
Alder Heck.
Thank you. Mary, are the transportation budget cuts primarily on, do you think, on the capital or the operating side? Is that clear, where or is it just a blanket cut and we have to figure out what to do with the aftermath?
That's a really good question. It was for Metropolitan Transit aides. I'm wondering if Tom Lynch is on the line and he might be able to explain further. Or Justin?
Yeah, I can take that. So the state aid that comes to us is entirely operating. So this cut is hitting operating budget directly. So yeah, there's no capital component here.
Okay, thank you. Disappointing news, but thank you.
Thank you, Alder Heck. Any further question from Mary? I do not see any hand raised, so thank you very much for your update. I appreciate that. We'll move forward to next agenda item, which is agenda item number 5, file number 66368. And just a quick acknowledgement, there's an update on CARES, and CARES stand for Community Alternative Response for Emergency Services. There was a mistake in an agenda item where it was written as Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security. So apologize for the confusion on agenda item. And Mayor, do you want to take it?
Yeah, thank you, President Abbas, and thanks for clarifying that. We hope that this program will be around much longer than the coronavirus. I do want to start again with a thank you to the council for your repeated support of this program, and particular recognition of Vice President Martin, for your work on this issue, and Alder Lemmer as well. When I came into office, it was the two of you who really flagged this work for me, and we were able to lift it up and move it forward. And so I'm pleased. I think we're making progress. Deputy Mayor Ruben Sanan is here to give us a little bit more detail on that project progress that we're making, and a little bit of a time frame of what to expect next.
Yep. So thanks for everybody for having me. And I have some notes right here, so I might look down every once in a while. And I'm going to back up a little bit. I'm not sure when the last time everybody had an update was. But we had an information session on June 22nd that was really well attended. I had about 150 people that signed up for that. And so everybody that had signed up got video of that, which is still on our media site. So if you didn't get that video, you can reach out to me and I can share that with you. And we got some great follow-up after that too. So people are really excited about it. At this point, we've hired all 4 people. So that's 2 community paramedics and 2 mental health crisis journey workers. And right now they're going through some extensive training, not only in their respective areas, but cross-training, and then a lot of cultural competency training and training at their station. So they're going to be at the station, the fire station located on Willie Street, because that's central to the central district. And so it'll be really great for them to be able to access different parts of that area of the community. And if you're not aware, they'll be alternating when some of them are out in the field and the other ones are doing follow-up back at the office. The group is really great. We're really excited about them. One of our people that's going to be on the team is a Spanish speaker, so we're excited that that's a really early part of our process. And then we're excited to announce that we're going to have our teams actually out in the community August 23rd. So that's in a little bit more than a month. And so that by then they'll have a lot of relationships built. So right now they're doing some site visits. Some of those site visits include getting to know the ER social workers, working a lot with homeless outreach advocates and workers, Mach 1 care centers, and then a whole list of other people that they're going to be partnering with on a regular basis. But if there's people that you think that they should be connected to, this is an evolving list. So you can reach out to me and we can add those names to it. And we're going to be doing a press conference the week before that launch. So that'll be an opportunity to kind of see what's going on the week before and just be reminded. And so obviously we'll do some press for that and some media for that as we get closer to that time. And then one of the last things I want to share with you is that we've put aside $100,000 for an evaluation of this process. So we have an internal person who set it up really great so that all of the data is kind of speaking with each other between MPD, Journey Mental Health, and Fire Department, and then also figuring out how that can fit later on into public health as this transitions into a public health project. And then that $100,000 would help us actually do a formal evaluation at the end of our trial period, or this first part of first phase of this project, so that we could know how to grow into the future and what the future of the program looks like. So those are my main updates. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much for your update. Any questions for Deputy Mayor Routing? Alder Bennett? You are muted. You don't want to ask question?
Wait, second. Sorry. Okay. Hi, I have a question. So I know that we allocated, I think, $150,000 to CARES with, with ARPA funds. And I was wondering how that's, impacting, current decisions, and should we expect for more money to be allocated to CARES in the following budgeting season?
For the 2022 budget, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So right now it sounds like we're set for the evaluation, for the uniforming, for the supplies that they'll need, for the training, and for the vehicle. So right now there's not clear what the next need will be, but I think once we have some months under our belt and we know if there's more time needed around certain hours or more resources needed, then we'll have a better idea of what kind of funding ask there is. So we're trying not to set ourselves up to make an ask before it's clear what would enhance the program, if that makes a little sense. So sorry, not a super clear answer.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? I do not see any hand raised, so thank you very much for the presentation and the update. I appreciate that. Now we will move to agenda item number 2, and I will also say thanks for all the registrants. We have a number of registrants waiting to speak. So agenda item is 66364, Bus Rapid Transit Update. Alder Heck.
Thank you, President Abbas. I just wanted to make sure I understood this agenda item. We're here to get an update, and we have no actionable item on this with regard to this agenda item. Isn't that correct?
This is correct.
Thank you. And then procedurally, will we hear public comment first or get the update first, as often committees do?
I was thinking about getting public comments first and then hear the updates.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Alder Heck. We have number of registrants wishing to speak. We will start with the Guoming Shu from Broughton Drive, Madison, in oppose and want to speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here. My name is Guan Mingxi. My family and partners own a small grocery store located at 346 State Street. That's where the proposed bus stop will be. So on behalf of my family, I would like to make the following statements. First, we support the BRT project because reduced transportation costs will help moving people around, not only for those with the tourism and leisure purposes, but also for working families who need to commute from work to home, from home to work, work to home. But second, we do not support the plan of adding the BRT station to the State Street. Instead, we support to move bus out of State Street and convert it into a pedestrian mall. So Madison is such a unique place in the country. I don't think there's any other state that has a world-renowned university in the state capital and actually right next to the capital. 16 years ago, I traveled from California here for my job interview. My future colleagues proudly presented the state capitol building and the campus to me in the city tour. They said that the Capitol building is one of the most magnificent in the country, and our campus along the lake is one of the most beautiful in the country as well. They're right, and that's what we have been proudly presenting to our friends and visitors when they came to visit Madison. Taking a walk from Bascom Hall to the state capitol along State Street has been must-see. Every block has its own beauty. The buildings, the little local stores, ice cream, the beer, the food. Many of my visitors have commented that it would be so nice imagining that kids can run around in the block and the various vendors can display their products in the middle of the street. State Street has such a unique location that makes it perfect for a pedestrian mall. It has double hotspots, one at each end of the street. Usually, pedestrian mall cannot be too long as the attractiveness is decreasing when moving away from the central hotspot, but this is not the case for State Street. It will be such a pity if the city dropped the ball on it. Third, talking about impact on us. Yes, we will be affected by the project as the new bus stop and the platform will take over the whole property front line. It means that there will not be potential use of the sidewalk for future tenants if they are restaurants, cafeteria, or retailers. You said that it will reduce the bus traffic flow on State Street, and we should feel happy, and that the bus stop was there originally, so we should not feel being affected negatively. But that's not how we see it. By you putting in new money into the BRT construction on State Street, we're taking away the option of the zero bus, that is the pedestrian mall opportunity completely. Pedestrian mall on State Street will be good to the community, to the economy, to the businesses, and to the city, but it involves construction cost and investment. The BRT project will be great to the community and to the city as well, but it involves cost investment as well. It could have been a good opportunity to incorporate. Yes.
We almost did your time, 3 minutes. So if you can wrap up, we will
Sure.
really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. It could have been a good opportunity to incorporate the two projects together to achieve the economy of scale that's low cost than doing them separately. It's very unfortunate to see this opportunity being forsaken, that concept of pedestrian mall on State Street being completely destroyed. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Next is Dimitri Varanes in oppose, want to speak from State Street, Madison, Wisconsin. Dimitri?
Yes, hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
You can hear me. All right. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak. I think this is what all of us have wanted, is just to be a part of the conversation and to find a solution that works for all of us, because there's not anything that we can't solve if we all just keep talking. I think there's a win-win for this somewhere. And for me, it's simple. I don't want any individuals or families harmed short-term or Madison harmed long-term for the 50 years. And I believe that we must remain fluid and flexible enough to evolve with the times. Personally, everyone I know, including myself, wants BRT downtown, but no one I know, including myself, wants BRT on State Street. Now, not everyone can agree on a pedestrian promenade, but I think we, the people of Madison, should have the freedom to choose and evolve with the times over the next 50 years. And to be totally honest, it's the approach that I don't really understand. At Parthenon here, we've been here for 50 years, been my family for 3 generations, and we operate with honesty, trust, and transparency. And as an owner of a successful half-century-old organization, who honestly I could probably do what I want, we operate differently. We operate more as a team. If there was something that I personally wanted to push through that nobody else here wanted, we wouldn't do it. And I would question myself if there was something that I wanted that nobody else did. So here, you see, we operate as a team and as a family. And it hasn't always been like this, don't get me wrong. But now, as we choose to how we operate, we don't operate as parents who think that we know better and speaking with children, but we like to operate as partners who listen and respect each other as equals. And here at our business, we're a democracy and not a dictatorship. And I would like to think of Madison as the same. And as far as this goes, as Madison, we the people of Madison, it's pretty clear that we don't want BRT on State Street. We do want it, but it's just not on State. And I genuinely believe if we keep discussing and talking, there is a win-win. There is a compromise that works for everyone, as long as we're included in the conversations. And I don't know anyone, including myself, again, that wants to jeopardize or lose this funding. It's extremely important, but I think we can do it so we can all win and all get the funding and make this happen for everyone. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Next is Sion Scannell from South Midwell Boulevard, Madison, in oppose and want to speak.
Hello, yes. Can we hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, my name is Sean Scannell. I'm a 36-year resident of the Madison area, 2-time UW Madison grad, spent a lot of time on State Street, and I'm very confused by how this project's been moving. I as the 2 previous people have said, I don't think anyone wants BRT on State. We all want State. And to that I say, why not Johnson and Gorham? We have these 2 very, very busy streets where there's not many pedestrians walking on. So there's less concern of safety, I guess, for people too. But there's these 2 busy streets that already exist there that are, I'm pretty sure, already part of the route that go east and west and just make a lot of sense to send the buses down. Why not put the bus stops on Johnson and Gorham? And I've heard 2 reasons for this, which I think are both diversions. The first reason is parking. And I think if BRT is successful, I would argue we need less parking. So I think we could stand to lose spots on Johnson and Gorham if it were for such a great cause. Or we could also talk about building another parking ramp. The second reason I've heard is sidewalk concerns, specifically sidewalk width concerns. And I would point to the retail study done on State Street a few years ago, which says that the State Street sidewalk is already not wide enough. So if we're going to take up more of that space for supposedly a lot more traffic of people, and I think we're also a growing town, so we need more. That growth, that need for pedestrian traffic on the sidewalks in State Street is only going to increase. I think that we really should reconsider if Johnson Gorham sidewalk is more or less valuable than State Street sidewalk. And so I think there's a way, like Dimitri said, I think there's a way where we can work together to figure that out. And then I have to ask why we're putting a bus route somewhere where we have to reroute it 70 plus times. That is 1/5 of the overall days of the year. That is so inconvenient for everyone. And I say plus because I want that to be 365. I want 365 days of events on State Street. So people can be down there hanging around shopping, because pedestrians buy things, buses don't buy things. Yes, buses bring people there, and we can still have Johnson at State be announced over the bus, or Gorham at State be announced over the bus, so it's still right at State Street. Again, we're asking, and it's been proposed to move it only less than a block, just around the corner from where they keep getting proposed.
Sean, the 3 minutes is over. Could you please wrap up?
Sure. Lastly, real quick, when we removed cars from State, there was a resurgence of State Street. I think we would see the same thing for buses. And I don't think we can compare State Street to all these other pedestrian malls that have failed, because none of them are an isthmus with two major things on both sides, as people have pointed. Thank you very much for all your time.
Thank you very much. Next is Emma Stephen from East Wilson Street, Madison, in oppose and want to speak. Emma?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. And thank you, Common Council Executive Committee. I have been a downtown Madison resident for the past 14 years and worked as the manager of Madison Modern Market since its beginnings in April 2013. While I am not a business owner, I pour everything I have into this small family-owned boutique and treat it as if it were my own. I am here today to oppose Madison's BRT system, Metro Rapid, as both a concerned resident and longtime employee. In researching the Metro Rapid project, I have compiled a list of questions I would like to pose to you. Regarding the revised station design presented during the mayoral news conference yesterday, these stations will still reduce sidewalk space to 5 feet between stations and properties. I ask, is 5 feet sufficient in providing a comfortable pedestrian experience on State Street? 60-foot buses run on State Street every 2.5 minutes, taking away from the pedestrian-centered design of this street if BRT is implemented. It indirectly affects patio dining, outdoor vending, walkability, and many other factors that make our street unique. Would any of you like to enjoy a meal on an outdoor patio with this type of traffic? Would you feel safe going on a family bike ride between buses the size of semi-trucks? If the atmosphere on State Street is ruined, who will want to use Metro Rapid to visit our once vibrant but now lackluster street? I know the 60-foot articulated buses from New Flyer have the capability to kneel. With this being said, why are the mayor and Department of Transportation still insistent on building a 50-foot station platform or a 70-foot station footprint when taking into account ramps, steps, and transitional areas on State Street? Understanding that station sizes can be further reduced, why are alternative routes and station locations not being explored to maintain the pedestrian-focused design of State Street, better serving both business owners and patrons? Why are we settling on a bus rapid transit route that will need to be routed 70 plus times a year? And where is the proposed State Street reroute for events like Maxwell Street Days and Carson State? Why were 40-foot electric buses from New Flyer not explored for Metro Forward? Are 60-foot articulated buses actually needed for a successful BRT system in Madison? What is the city's plan for not only incentivizing increased ridership, but also incentivizing individuals to use BRT to travel downtown and patronize businesses? The mayor stated yesterday that the majority of riders who boarded buses at the top of State Street in 2019 interacted with businesses on State Street. Where did she find her data on ridership intent for these specific stops? In the 2015 Metro Transit Onboard Survey, although looking at ridership throughout the entire Madison Metro system versus the top of State Street, it showed that 71.3% of rider trip purpose was home-based to work. I'm sorry, can I have a few more minutes?
No, I apologize. You can wrap up quickly, but we have numbers of participants and everybody get 3 minutes. So I apologize, we cannot extend the time.
I guess I just want to follow up by saying that I'm disappointed in the lack of direct communication with downtown stakeholders. I would like more research about ridership trip intent. I'd like more information about the bus reduction. And I'd like more information about why this is a done deal when it was not presented that way earlier this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Bill Connor from 25th West Main Street, Madison. Neither support, neither oppose and want to speak. Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Council President, and thank you, Executive Committee, for the opportunity to speak with you. I'm Bill Connors. I'm the Executive Director of Smart Growth Greater Madison. Smart Growth supports BRT and thinks it will be a good thing for the whole city and particularly for downtown Madison. But that running the BRT buses down State Street and around the Capitol Square is not wise. The BRT buses on State Street, as others have mentioned, is really not compatible with the pedestrian use of that area, of that space. It isn't with the current buses, and it won't be with the BRT buses either. What we want is to maximize the number of pedestrians walking up and down State Street, because that's how downtown businesses get business. That's how State Street businesses get business. And that's what makes the place a vibrant location where people want to be. And so, as others have mentioned, it makes much more sense to place a station on Gorham and a station on Johnson very near the intersection with State Street, so that people can get off of the BRT bus and then be able to walk up and down State Street without any buses or BRT buses going up and down the street. As far as the Capitol Square, the outer loop is the area that needs the most economic stimulation, and the BRT, having the BRT present on the outer loop would energize that area and lead to more investment. So it makes more sense to put the BRT route on the outer loop rather than on the Capitol Square. Also, it's easier to configure alternative routes that avoid State Street if you're operating on the outer loop rather than on the Capitol Square. What we urge is that for the city not to invest large amounts of money in expensive permanent stations on State Street or the Capitol Square until a new downtown Madison plan can be completed, and that plan can inform what is going to go on State Street, the Capitol Square, the outer loop, and that the BRT routing in that area serves that vision instead of stifling that vision. If we make a large investment in permanent, expensive stations on the Capitol Square and on State Street, later when we have a new plan, a new vision for downtown Madison, and we want to implement it, and BRT gets in the way, we'll be told, no, we spent all that money on those expensive stations. We can't change the routes now. So what we're urging is to just use the present bus stops and their present shelters rather than build expensive new stations on State Street.
Time.
And just one more item. Please do the update of the downtown Madison plan much earlier than 2028, which is currently being recommended by city staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next is Carmelo Alfano from State Street Madison in oppose and want to speak. Carmelo.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you for letting me speak today at this Common Council Executive Committee. I want to start off by saying all 4 living mayors and many current City of Madison officials support the effort to reroute proposed BRT off of State Street. Meanwhile, Mayor Rhodes Conway pretends there are no other options. State Street stakeholders and community members are desperate for the mayor to forego her myopic careerism and consider our vision for the future of one of Madison's most iconic corridors. Tomlin's forecast that the BRT line will be primarily be used by people commuting to and from work. Yet we continue to hear suggestions that State Street would benefit from becoming a corridor full of congested bus traffic. State Street busiest times are during special events, like the Farmers Market, Madison Night Market, and the newly introduced Madlit, which led to many Upper State Street merchants welcoming business volume not seen since June 2019. Currently, downtown reroutes occur 72 times per year. That number will only increase as the city's residents desire more creativity and events downtown. More events are in the works as cities focus on bringing people of diverse backgrounds together for music, art, education, crafts, food, and entertainment. These types of events foster an irreplaceable sense of community in downtown Madison. State Street is a world-class cultural center, not a transportation depot. Current bus stops drop off an average of 2 people per bus stop on State Street, or 700 people per day. This is no comparison to special events that continue to grow each and every year. These events bring in not hundreds, but sometimes tens of thousands of people per event. If we were to maximize State Street's potential without any compromises, it would be a special event every single day. Forgive us for being skeptical of the mayor's claim that bus traffic will decrease by 50%. That figure must only refer to the first phase of the BRT implementation. However, when BRT runs every 2.5 minutes, the buses will stop on State Street 35% more often, totaling 432 stops per day versus 321 bus stops per day in 2021. This does not include local stops, which the mayor says may or may not be rerouted. She is not certain. The new BRT stations will also likely have a footprint over 4 times larger than all current stops, benches, signposts, and small shelters on the upper half of State Street combined. Current square footage is approximately 400 square feet versus the 1,500 square feet for both BRT stations that are proposed. Notably, it still remains to be demonstrated exactly why it is essential to put BRT stations on State Street when reasonable alternatives exist. Despite what the mayor thinks, all of us business owners believe BRT will hurt State Street businesses. I know of very few customers who take the bus, and my co-workers all walk to work, or if they take the bus, they prefer to get off of State Street and walk a block or 2.
Your time is over. Please wrap up.
Okay, I have my conclusion. To be clear, we are all in favor of BRT. The first phase brings much excitement, better connecting our city and residents. But before we put the pedal to the metal, order those buses and start construction, let's take a step back to evaluate if routing down State Street is truly the best interest for all. If we care about fostering the culture, diversity, and sense of community that makes our neighborhood a unique destination, then the current plan would only succeed in shattering the future of State Street and downtown Madison. Please reroute buses off of State Street. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next is Dana Long, University Avenue, Madison. Neither support nor oppose and wish to speak. Dana?
Hi, my name is Dana Long. I'm apparently the first person a lot of you have ever met who wants BRT on State. It's so good to meet you. You should be friends with more bus riders. I have worked for the last 8 years within a block of Capitol Square in downtown Madison. Parking is pretty expensive, so throughout that time, I've relied heavily on the bus to get to work. As a longtime bus rider, I'm opposed to plans to remove bus routes from State Street and removing bus rapid transit from State Street for several reasons. First, I would say if we adopt the proposed alternatives that people are throwing out, like Johnson and Gorham and sometimes West Washington, it subjects bus riders like me to far more car traffic and more dangerous interactions with cars as we attempt to cross these streets to get to bus stops. I'm speaking from experience here. It's hard enough just to get to my current bus stop without having some kind of dangerous interaction with a car who doesn't want to stop to let me cross the street. I'm not interested in more of that for myself or anyone else. We know that these streets are problematic for pedestrians, and we know that pedestrians in the city regularly navigate dangerous and abusive behavior from motorists who are driving too fast, driving distracted, etc. 2 people have died in the last month on Madison streets, hit by cars. When we require bus riders to navigate heavy traffic in order to get to the bus, we're increasing the risk that someone will be hit and killed, and we limit the number of people who are comfortable taking the bus. You know, it's one thing for me as a single adult woman to cross a dangerous street. It doesn't feel good, but I'm mostly safe. I can't imagine trying to do that with small children or entrusting a child to get downtown for some reason. And I have a lot of questions too about the folks who work at businesses on State Street and whether or not they like the idea of crossing those streets to get to their low-paying jobs. I'm also opposed to removing bus routes from State Street because I think it reinforces a major misperception about transit riders, which is that they are not interacting with State Street businesses, both as workers and customers. A lot of the business owners on State Street talk about bus riders like we're separate from what they do, which is surprising to me as someone who spent hundreds of dollars at restaurants, shops, coffee shops, bars, etc. at State Street over the years. It's true that I'm getting down there for work, but the fact that the bus stop is close to a coffee shop is pretty convenient in the morning, and I certainly go out to eat and go out to happy hour and so forth after work. I'm also a customer of your businesses, and so it's surprising when you act like that's maybe distinct. It's not. And since we know that more and more people need to be riding the bus to replace car trips, more and more of your customers are also going to be transit riders every year. So I hope that, we can start to encourage businesses to adopt that mindset instead of treating them like they're separate. Finally, I want to point out that the city has already gone out of its way to provide an alternative design to the more obstructive bus rapid transit shelters. As someone who's worked on traffic safety issues at the neighborhood level, I'm very impressed actually by the responsiveness and attention that this issue has already received. I think businesses are lucky that the city is working so quickly to address some of these concerns. And to me, this seems like an eminently reasonable compromise when we're talking about issues as serious as maintaining pedestrian safety and bus ridership in a project that will already directly benefit businesses on State Street and around the city. Those of us who ride the bus and bike and walk, we make car light and car free spaces like State Street possible.
Excuse me, Dana, your time is over. Could you please wrap up?
Yep. We're the ones who make car light and car free spaces possible. It's a mistake to make our travel less safe.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next is John Downs of West Washington Avenue, oppose and want to speak.
Joan is not with us on the meeting, but it looks like John Hayes is.
Perfect. Then we will go with John Hayes from State Street, oppose and want to speak. John?
Glad to speak with you. I am the owner of Goods Jewelers and have been our business been on State Street longer than anybody else. We oppose the BRT.
John, we are having a hard time to hear you. Excuse me, we are having a hard time to hear you. Would you please change your location?
Is that better?
Can you speak again?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, give it a try.
Okay. Good Jewelers oppose the BRT going down State Street. We don't oppose bus on State Street. We see them run a lot slower than they do because that seriously creates a problem for pedestrians and bicyclists. The rerouting of this large bus system 20% of the year doesn't make sense. Put it together so that it's used consistently around so people know where to get it every day, not 80% of the time, and make the shelters certainly smaller than what you've got them planned. You've reduced it, but do they really need to be that large? And do the buses need to be that large? The ridership that I see going up and down State Street is minimal. And you want to drive these buses down, get people from West Side and downtown, have them stop at places that make more sense logistically. State Street's a very narrow area, and there's a lot, at least we want to be having a lot of pedestrian traffic. And this is going to be counterproductive to that. It's going to be counterproductive to reinvigorating State Street. There's a great plan for East Town, great plan for West Town. What about downtown? You're leaving us out of the whole picture by just pushing this through. It's take the time to do it right. Don't rush it. There's plenty of sit down and talk about it time, and we can work with the grant system to still get the money, but we got to do it right. I yield my time.
Thank you, John. Next is Alex Joas, Lenton Street, Madison, oppose and want to speak. Alex.
It looks like Alex is not with us.
Okay, we will move forward to Craig Bartlett from Osmundson Court, Fitchburg, oppose and want to speak. Craig.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, Alders, longtime resident, first-time caller. I'm extremely passionate about not having BRT on State Street. I don't have anything on Dimitri from Parthenon, but I am a third generation of Bartlett that has worked on State Street. My grandfather moved his family to Madison to run Redwood and Was at 651 State Street in the 50s. My father worked at Petrie Sporting Goods at 641 State Street and later at the First Federal Savings and Loan on the 200 block. Up until December of last year, I worked at the 100 State Street building, and prior to COVID, employed 25 people while owning Isthmus Publishing Company and Red Card Media. COVID ended Isthmus for me, and my Red Card Media office has since relocated to 622 West Wash. In my youth, I would ride the bus to the farmer's market on Saturdays. I'd eat cheese curds and chocolate eclairs, and at no point would I find it necessary to be riding on a bus on State Street. As a young adult, I spent countless hours walking on State Street when I worked for the Onion newspaper, which is when the thought of State Street without transit took hold. I've spent the better part of the last 7 years working on State, and every day I think about it, what it could actually be. We want to make it a more vibrant and welcoming to all, then let's do it. Let's program it. Let's put pop-up shops on it. Let's activate it in every way possible. Can you imagine if we had a dedicated place for things like Maxwell Street Days, night markets, Cars on State, Mad Lit, Juneteenth celebrations, Pride festivals? Could you imagine what it'd look like if our State Street business owners could invest in permanent solutions for expanded cafes and retail like their counterparts on King and Pinckney have been able to do on the other side of the square? Well, I can. Sadly, none of this is possible if we put BRT down State Street. I'm a downtown business owner and a board member for Madison Central Business Improvement District. I've attended many presentations on BRT over the past 2 years and have been involved in many discussions as this process has unfolded. As countless others have said to you, and I'll say again, we're in support of BRT and always have been, just not there. We signed off in support of the project after being told by the mayor's office and Metro that we would have time to reevaluate routing. That certainly has not happened. The lack of transparency on this project, the communication, or maybe better said, miscommunication, has been astounding. If BRT gets ramrodded through, it's going to set State Street as a bus transportation corridor for the next 40 to 50 years. So the State Street that we know, or the one that we dream of knowing, will cease to exist. So I'll end with this. I stole this from my dad, who's had heart issues. If State Street and the Capitol Square are the
on washing machine, sorry,
don't clog its main arteries with buses, please.
Thank you, Craig. Next is Casey Steiner from Atwood Avenue, Madison, support and want to speak. Casey.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Cassie. I'm a transit rider, and I'm extremely supportive of bus rapid transit on State Street. It's nice to meet all of you. Now you can say that you know at least two people who are supportive of this proposal, and I know there are many more who couldn't be here today. There are many reasons to support bus rapid transit on State Street. I use the bus to get around Madison. When I'm not going to my office on Willie Street or to the Capitol for work, I'm going to State Street on the bus. And when my family visits from out of town and they want to visit State Street as well, we take the bus due to my grandma's mobility issues. And I'm not alone. Transit works best when it connects people to jobs, recreation, retail, as well as bike and pet opportunities. When I hear all of those things, I think State Street. And studies show that economic benefits and development near transit happen rapidly. There's a reason that places like Amazon and Google are requiring transit connections when they build. It's really disappointing to hear anti-transit rhetoric wrapped up in this language that makes it sound reasonable when it's really not. Things about buses being smelly, bad for business, ugly, or bringing people to the area who are not wanted near businesses are really offensive things to hear, especially as a bus rider. It's a really critical moment for this project. The climate needs more transit so we get cars off the road. There is public support for bus rapid transit. This is an equitable solution to get people with disabilities to State Street without having to walk if they're not able to. people of color are disproportionately likely to ride the bus. And seeing all of the Black Lives Matter art on State Street businesses, I would really hope that support of something that connects folks of color to businesses would be supported. There's federal funding, and the mayor, governor, and president are all supportive of efforts like this. It's really hard to hear Madison businesses use rhetoric that I heard from the state legislature when they were cutting the funding to Madison Metro Transit. I might have to start to rethink my support of some of your businesses after hearing what you said at this meeting today. I ride transit because it gets me where I need to go really conveniently, and it lets me go to places like State Street. I know that the Common Council doesn't have a decision at this meeting here today, but I'm thankful for you taking public comments, and I'm thankful for the mayor for her advocacy in moving this project forward. It should have been built years ago, and it's exciting that it could be now. I hope that we don't slow down this process because bus rapid transit in Madison is long overdue.
Thank you very much. Next is Joseph Perkins from Bridle Pass, Sun Prairie, oppose and wish to speak.
Okay, so I need to promote Joe to panelist in order to let him to speak. So he must have an older version of Zoom.
That's fine.
Okay. Okay. Here we go. Joe, you should be unmuted.
I'm good. Thank you. So I'm sitting here going, thinking of all the stuff that people are saying. Number one, Dana and the last girl I was just on, thanks for reading your script about what's so good about the bus transit. So good about that. Do you understand something? I don't think anybody understands something. I've done the math. I was told by Tom that 950 people will be coming downtown every day, right? Correct? Can somebody answer me? President? Anybody?
Mr. Perkins, please you can give your statement and the later staff will answer.
Okay, I'll give this statement. If you cut me off at 3 minutes, we're gonna have a problem. I own Tuda Pasta downtown Madison, okay? So downtown Madison, or anywhere close to that, we're done. 23 years, done. You don't understand this. I've done the math. The only thing that works out for me is that 950 people a day is $511,290 a year for the city. How much revenue is lost for businesses? I've asked once, twice, 3 times now for cost-effective analysis to the effect on business on State Street for the bus BRT. Nobody's got that to me yet. Nobody. Not one person. Do you have a president? Do you have a cost-effective analysis for the business on State Street? Do you have that? I'm asking you a question. Yes or no?
Mr. Perkins, please, we will get your answer. We will ask those questions and staff will answer those when the time will come. Please keep.
That's a no. You don't have that answer. Okay. So Sean said a good thing. State Street is not wide enough for 60-foot buses. It's not wide enough for 40-foot buses. There's no parking on State Street for a reason. It's not wide enough. Why do you want to put buses on State Street? It makes no sense. I get it. The Capitol is the one up there. They don't want these big bus stations up there. I get it. Nor do we. It should be a pedestrian mall walking up and down. Okay? Absolutely stupid to put buses on State Street. Lost last year on State Street? Do you? Does anybody in the mayor's office know how much money we lost on State Street? I lost $500,000 last year. I've mortgaged my whole kid's future of what pandemic did to us. And you want to do this to us? How about think about that? You have not thought about that. To move a bus stop 30 feet on busy streets? How about that? How about do it that way instead of doing what you're doing now? You cut one leg off, you cut another leg off next time. We also have a 10-story high-rise being built on State Street, the 300 block, right? Correct, Mr. President? 10-story high-rise, right? Yes or no?
Time.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Time is over. Next is Tiffany Kenny from West Washington Avenue, Madison. Neither support or oppose, wish to speak, represent Madison Central District. Central Bid, I mean, not district. Apologize for that. Tiffany?
There we go.
There we go. Thank you. I think you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Thank you. I do want to give us all just a second to breathe after Joe's passion. You know, Joe represents one of our downtown businesses, and I'm here to represent them as a whole. Many of you I've had the privilege or the opportunity to meet before. Thank you, Alder Abbas, and the rest of this body for taking up this conversation. You know, Alder Heck asked, why are we here? Oh, who am I? Tiffany Kenny with the bid. He said that in my intro. Why are we here? Alder Heck asks. And I think the reason that we're here is we're here for really two reasons. We're here because there have been broken promises and we haven't felt heard in the past. And we're here because of the style in which the mayor and Metro continue to present the information and continue to try to work to guide our downtown. I don't have to go into a lot of detail about what the bid is asking for. We are asking you in very specific requests to look at the station locations to get them off of State Street. You can see from the attached Legistar that we've been supportive of BRT from the very, very beginning. We've been supportive early and often. I wish we could be standing behind the mayor as she makes announcement after announcement of the next phase of BRT. We want BRT in downtown Madison. I registered not in opposition or support because it's really hard. We want to support it, but we are not in support of this current plan and the current location for stations. More importantly, though, we're not in support of not planning for our future. The last time there was a plan for downtown Madison, it was completed in 2012, and we're hearing now that there won't be another plan for downtown Madison until 27 or 28. That's not acceptable. That's not what we need for our community, and we really want a holistic approach that we can look at transportation and all elements of transportation together, as well as the economics and the important social gathering place that downtown has been. Transportation is buses, it's parking, it's bicycles, it's pedestrians, and it's accessibility. And we hear people who have concerns about all of those things. And we agree there are concerns, and we'd like to have that holistic, full picture planning opportunity. And if we put these stations on State Street, our plan is set and our path is laid for the next 50 years. And we in downtown Madison, you hear it from the businesses, you hear it from many of the residents. If you were paying attention to and following the media right now, everyone is asking for an opportunity to plan for the future of downtown. And that's what we're here for today, is we know that you think plans are set, routes are determined, but what we're asking is really what is the plan for the future of downtown Madison, and how does transportation play an important and vital role, but not the dominating and not the only component of the future of downtown.
Thank you, Tiffany. Next is Saina Marie Finlayson from East Johnson Street, Madison, oppose and wish to speak.
It's like they are not with us.
All right, thank you. We'll move forward to Ryan Richards from Inner Drive, Madison, Wisconsin, oppose and want to speak. Ryan?
Okay, Ryan, you should have a prompt to unmute yourself. There you go.
I'm here. Thank you, everybody, for the time tonight. And obviously, this is a passionate issue. I'm coming from a person who loves coming downtown. I'm also an event director, event planner, event organizer. I'm part of that 70 plus days that this would have to be rerouted or find other things. But if I'm not planning an event downtown, I'm generally attending one or obviously supporting one in other ways. So I feel like the Capitol Square, which a couple of years ago was excluded from a downtown zone, that impacted almost every single event that's been held downtown over the years, was made an excluded zone, and that included the 100 block of State Street. So that meant it could be an event place. And this is really, flying in the face of that and not allowing it to happen as much. So I just have a lot of questions. I'm going to state my questions, and I'm not going to expect an answer, obviously. Part of that is the ease of rerouting these buses. What does that cost to reroute these buses? Event planners pay a pretty significant amount of money to reroute every bus route that's impacted with events. Is there a different weekend schedule for bus rapid transit? I've tried to find it. I haven't really found any answers on that. So I just, there's questions that I don't feel are getting answered. I feel like that's a common theme tonight, is that that people just aren't being heard, and I think that's a real problem with this moving forward. So as Craig Bartlett said, the heartbeat of downtown is State Street and the Capitol Square, and I'm very much in favor of bus rapid transit. I'm just very much opposed to it being on the square and on State Street itself. I feel like there's other alternatives that can be discussed and worked through. That being said, I'm going to end my time, but I would like to give support for the West Side alternate number 3 for the west side of the bus rapid transit route. So thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Next is Christina Brungart, oppose, wish to speak from State Street, Madison, and also represent Madison Museum of Contemporary Art. Christina.
Okay, it looks like I also have to promote Christina. She should be popping up on the panelist list here shortly.
Christina, you're unmuted. You can speak.
Christina, it looks like you may not have a microphone enabled. It may be easier for you to call in on the phone. The instructions to do that are on the agenda.
Are you able to hear me now?
Oh, there we go. Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. This is Christina Brungart. I wanted to thank you all for the opportunity. Am I broadcast now? I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to speak at this meeting. Okay, great. Thank you. I'm here on behalf of Madison Museum of Contemporary Art. This is Christina Brungart. And we do have concerns about the plan for BRT and its impact on State Street businesses. Many are still struggling due to the pandemic. And as a nonprofit, we have also been impacted with reduced fundraising, canceled events, the closure of our store, and the pending loss of our restaurant tenants. As a free museum, we serve the community and do not profit from street traffic. Instead, we thrive by the community who comes to State Street and are actively developing a culture corridor with engaging, community-facing State Street content. Art has a value far beyond economic impact. Research has demonstrated that a vibrant cultural community yields a healthier civil society, increased civic engagement, greater social tolerance, better mental and physical health, and a space for open dialogues about issues impacting society. After the past 16 months, this is vital. MoCA has pivoted in the last year to make sure our windows inspire the public and provide a platform for artists and the community. We have many exhibitions planned for 2022 and 2023 that utilize the windows to draw more crowds to State Street in hopes of supporting the downtown community and businesses. Our current exhibition Immense has drawn incredible attention and activity to the street and city, receiving national news recognition with coverage being filmed directly where the anticipated bus platform will be located. In addition, we are planning a public sculpture that was specially designed for all to view and draw viewers as well as critical conversations to State Street. There are also logistical considerations of public access and emergency egress on State Street once we return to regular programming. We appreciate sincerely the recent efforts made by BRT planners to listen to our concerns and their attempts to narrow the footprint of the stations. However, as stated in meetings with their team, we do not appreciate being pitted against our neighbors to determine which business will be most or least impacted. We also do not think this is the time to add to the burden of a struggling neighborhood. Finally, the plan has a 50-year impact on State Street and denies us all the opportunity to grow and change our business models. Our goal is for everyone, even those casually passing by our building, to experience contemporary art in new and profound ways. We are happy to work in partnership with the mayor on a plan that develops in response to the transit needs and promotes the cultural and economic vibrancy of the city. We support rapid transit for Madison. It provides critical infrastructure for the city and is an important means of transportation for all, museum visitors and visitors to our city. So thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. Next, and our last registrant to wishing to speak is Marnie McKenty, Long Meadow Road, Madison, oppose and wish to speak. Also represent Theodora Zanner, Madison, Wisconsin.
President Abbas, I just want to clarify that we do have Joan Downs directly after her. So Joan, if you just want to hang on, we will be right to you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I am actually speaking on behalf of Theodora Zahner, who goes by Teddy Zahner. She is a longtime volunteer for Madison Museum of Contemporary Art. So I'm just going to read a statement that Teddy gave us to share with you. She wrote this on July 6th. I support the BRT project concept. I do not support the current proposal of buses and the installation of stations on State Street. Today, I stood on the 200 block of State Street next to the major doors of Overture and faced the 300 block, 400 block, etc. The one block that looks unlike any other is the 200 block for the entire length of the Overture and MoCA buildings. Trees finally looking mature, beautiful plantings for the length of the block, public seating, a cool, restful, welcoming area on a very hot day. The effect conveyed a thoughtful, beautified, sophisticated city, a picture postcard worthy source for promotional advertising. A bus station will ruin the one perfect block on all of State Street. For over 25 years, I have volunteered for the Madison Museum of Contemporary Art, serving in many capacities from president of the volunteer group to chairing fundraising events to being a trustee to my current position as a member of the museum's advisory council. This building opened to great acclaim in 2006. It is certainly the most prestigious contemporary building in the city of Madison. It was designed by the world-renowned architect Cesar Pelli. It is a landmark and unlike any other building in the city. Today, I also stood at the other end of the 200 block at the entrance of MoCA. I checked the dimensions of the proposed station. I checked the width of the sidewalk. I checked the length of the larger buses. Please note that this is the same area where Tom Lynch, City Director of Transportation, was photographed. As far as I could determine, 2 trees plus 2 full planters would be removed and replaced by a structure that would totally mask the facade of the museum. This is unacceptable. Through 30 years of living in Madison, I've come to realize the fragility of our beloved State Street. Its needs must include the merchants, the restaurants, and the public centers like MoCA, Overture Center for the Arts, as well as transportation. Surely for this unique and historic area, an alternative can be found to have a BRT route with stations placed elsewhere. These stations will be what people see, not what's behind the stations. And what exists behind the stations will be the very sources for keeping State Street viable. Sincerely, Theodore Zahner, Madison. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And next participant is John Downs from West Washington Avenue, opposed, wish to speak.
John, you should have a prompt to unmute yourself. John, if you hit *6 on your phone, that should also unmute you.
Stefan, do you want to work with John? Here we go. He's unmuted.
There we go. Joan, you're unmuted on our end. Looks like we lost Joan.
While we try to get him back, there's another registrant just registered, Antonio Buox. I apologize for the pronunciation, from Raymond Road, Madison, opposed and wish to speak. Antonio.
Thank you very much. I just had a simple question. I'm a business owner myself and a strategy consultant around the state of Wisconsin for businesses ranging from the millions to multi-billion-dollar revenue streams. And I don't understand the perspective of some of the members in this chat thinking that by denying customers the ability to access their businesses, they'll be harmed by it. The fact of the matter is that anybody heading down to State Street who's going to engage with those businesses, such as I know Tudo's Pasta put forward a concern that it would harm their business, but that traffic comes through by bus. A lot of people who are down on State Street spending that money aren't doing it when they can afford cars to drive to other places. So perhaps if people in businesses are concerned about the revenue stream that buses would prevent, they should think about what their demographic is instead of furthering the stratification of classes on State Street. As a liberal city that tends to say we value diversity and people heading downtown, there seems to be a disconnect between the mission objective of these companies and organizations and the principles that we tout and the behaviors and concerns that are being raised here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Antonio. Stefan, do we have?
I have not been able to connect with Joan.
Right. Perhaps if we don't have John with us, I see a couple of emails from Joe Perkins. Could we unmute and see if John is with him? Perhaps, if that's okay with the body. Stephen, can you please unmute Joe Perkins?
Yep. I have to promote him to panelist again. All right.
So I appreciate the fact that the guy just said that Tudo Pasta, he named one restaurant on State Street as Tudo Pasta. That's pretty bad.
All right. We have to, if John is not here, then we will move forward. Thank you very much for the public comment. There are total 104 people registered, 2 in support. Just let me look at the updated list. Just give me 1 second. Total 106 registered, 2 in support, 100 in opposition, 4 neither support or in opposition. So I will not repeat their names. Council staff just sent that file to all of us. So please have a moment and take a look. Is there any question for attendees? I have just one question for Tiffany, if we can get Tiffany back. Thank you, Tiffany.
Good evening.
Thank you for your testimony. I have one very quick question, and I will have a similar question for the staff as well. I just want to hear about what type of communication has been done by the city staff on this particular proposed BRT route on a straight street. So if you can highlight the communication happened with you, if you give us some background, that would be great.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Alder Abbas, President Abbas, for giving us this time. We have been, in terms of the public input, when there have been public listening sessions over the last several years prior to COVID, we tried to send representatives and participate in many ways. And along the way, we saw several different routes, but we also were trying to work in tandem with the mayor and Metro staff to get this approval from the federal or state level that we were hopeful to seek. So we attended those meetings. We saw a couple routes. I think you heard early on from us that we weren't very much in support of the first route, but alternate 1A might be something we'd be interested in hearing or exploring more. And so, with a lot of passion and a lot of support, we put forward, both the bid and other organizations downtown, put forward, supporting statements about BRT because we are supportive of it. We do recognize the transportation challenges that are before us, the opportunity before us. I think we all see that. And we wanted to get behind as a city and talk about this. But we were very much under the impression that the route itself, including this alternate 1A or there's alternate 3, there's a couple routes that the city had presented, we thought would still have some open dialogue and open conversation. So we were really very much surprised when then this year we were told there wasn't much conversation, if any, flexibility in the route, and we moved on to the station conversation. And so as we talk about stations, we're sort of struggling because you've probably heard it now from me a couple of times, but it's really hard to pick out the outfit to the party if you don't want to go to the party. But we've tried to at least talk about stations and bring people together. And in our first meeting, bringing people together about the bus rapid transit station on the 200 block of State Street, that's when we learned from Metro staff that, hey, guess what? There might be a station on the 300 block of State Street. So we scrambled again, get our constituents together from the 300 block of State Street. And at that time, when we have the meeting with Tom Lynch and Metro staff, we're again told, oh, just kidding, maybe there's a different location, or maybe it will be somewhere else. And it continues to sort of move through this channel that doesn't feel inclusive at all. And instead is starting to put people against each other. So the mayor may tell you coming up in the presentation, or someone may tell you they've talked to people downtown. You've heard from the constituents that are being most directly impacted by these proposed stations. They weren't in conversation with the mayor about this, or the mayor's staff or Metro staff about it. We're all surprised constantly. And we don't understand why the word collaboration or cooperation aren't high on the priority list for this project. We'd much rather be behind it and supportive of it. I wish, like I had said earlier on in this, that we were really behind, that we were writing letters of support, excited that we looked at these stations that were going to be in the downtown area as something that was an opportunity for us, instead of spending this time trying to recover from the last year fighting about BRT. We'd much rather be thinking about cool opportunities to bring everyone together downtown and to revitalize our heartbeat, as the other folks have been saying on this call today.
Thank you very much, Tiffany, for answering my question. Any further question for any attendees? I do not see any hand raised, so we will move forward to the staff. Tom?
President Abbas, if I might.
Yes, Madam Mayor, of course.
Thank you, President Abbas. I just want to, again, give a little introduction. We're going to have a presentation from both Tom Lynch and Justin Stuenberg in a minute. And I'm sure that they'll cover some of what I'm going to say, so I won't take up too much more of your time. But I do just want to say that this is a conversation. The conversation around rapid transit is one that's been going on for 3 decades in Madison. And I have been following it for almost that long, not quite, but almost, and have been continually frustrated by our inability to make progress. And frankly, our inability to make progress is exactly because of the kind of conversations that we're having now. We couldn't agree, we couldn't decide between commuter rail and rapid transit in Madison. We couldn't agree on whether or not we should have a streetcar because we couldn't agree where it should go. And now we have the opportunity to actually achieve rapid transit in Madison after 3 decades. And we have had so much conversation about this, including a lot of interaction with downtown stakeholders. And I there's this recent trope around, oh, we thought that there was that the routes were going to change, that we still had a chance to change the routes. I honestly, that befuddles me, because every conversation that I've had about the Common Council voting on the locally preferred alternative has been, I think, abundantly clear that when you as a body last voted, that was what we were submitting to the federal government. And that's the point in time that the decision was made. The Common Council made that decision, and any change to that decision now would require pulling back our submission from the federal government and starting again. So it's just confusing to me that people are trying to rewrite history here. But anyway, that aside, I'm very excited about this project. And I actually think that particularly the stations have been made much better because of input from downtown businesses. There was some very legitimate concerns, and I think you'll understand when you see the visuals how legitimate those concerns are. And I think that the work that staff have done to come up with a new iteration of the design is well done. I think the new designs are much better, and I think they do address a number of the concerns that we've heard. So I'm excited for you to get the full picture from staff, and for you to be able to get your questions answered. I'm also happy to answer any questions that you might have along the way. But for now, I'll turn it over to Tom, who I think is going to start the presentation.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. So I'll do the first part of this, and Justin will do the second part. I'm going to push the slideshow, and sometimes slides don't advance. And so if you don't see them advancing, let me know. Do you see a full screen, or do you see the presenter view, just out of curiosity?
We see the full screen.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to take a 10,000 foot view because I just feel like we always have to look at the 10,000 foot view. From 2017 to 2024 years, Madison approved 10,000 dwelling units, creating 80,000 daily trips. So to give perspective on that, East Washington Avenue carries 50,000 trips. So that's kind of the types of things. And this occurred even during the recession. In 2017 to 2020, again, 4 years, Madison approved 5 million square feet. So if you were to equate a typical ratio of 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet, that would be 15,000 parking spaces. So the city of Madison owns about, manages 10,000 parking spaces. So just kind of imagine what that is. We look at our job growth. We're really in a fortunate situation, and probably I think there'd be cities throughout the United States that would just love to be in our situation. We have 200,000 jobs in 2010. There's about another 98,000 projected for Dane County, and that's a new figure that has been revised upward. 46,000 are projected for Madison by 2050, 14 to 18,000 in the Isthmus. So again, if you think about these jobs in the Isthmus, We have 10,000 parking spaces in the instruments, public and private. Where do we put all these workers? How do we even fit them in? We just need a different way of getting things done. These are kind of the past high capacity or rapid rail and transit projects that we've had. The 80 to 81 transit technology corridor study and the transit priority corridor study, I was not around for. However, I was around for the light rail transit corridor study, and that failed. That did not go anywhere. Then there was this 96 study to evaluate commuter rail, and that did not go anywhere. 98 didn't go anywhere. There was some life, perhaps, in the 99 to 2003 commuter rail alternative, because perhaps if it got coupled with the Midwest Rail Initiative, maybe we could afford to do it. But then the Midwest Rail Initiative got canceled. And so then we tried to move forward with the 2005 to 2018 transfer 2020 commuter rail preliminary engineering. And we were actually told by FTA to turn back. They just said, don't even submit an application because we just won't qualify. So here you can see there's that's 30 years of us trying to do something. And since 2011, we've been working on the bus rapid transit. First, it was the feasibility study that was by the NPO, and now we've been working on the planning study. What is our plan? Our main plan is basically the blue line. The blue line is our east-west rapid transit that we submitted to the FTA. On the edges, we will have 15-minute frequency, not 30-minute frequency. But to meet the capacity demands in central Madison, and what we've done is we've paired local service with BRT buses so that really between the campus and Capitol Square, we'll be able to have 5-minute frequency. And from the Capitol Square out to First Street, we'll be able to have 7-minute frequency. And this is really just due to the innovation of our new general manager, Justin, who will speak later. So what's on our line? Now, this is just the blue line that you just saw. We have 120,000 jobs, 80,000 residents, 3 hospitals, 2 higher education institutions. And then if you include our extensions, it goes to 4. If you look at where our job concentrations are, this graphic shows the jobs per acre. And this is what we really want, is we want to get people out of cars, get people into a bus, and go to work. And so we're able to hit our 2 highest concentration job generators, which is the Capitol Square as well as the university. But if you look, we're also able to hit University Research Park and all the jobs along Mineral Point. We're able to hit the jobs up in the Northeast by Madison College. And we've actually kind of put our toes into the water in that we are extending a kind of a light service, a BRT light service into Sun Prairie. I just gave a presentation to the TID board because we are hoping to fund some of this with TIF monies, and the people on the TID board include Madison College as well as MAT, Madison Schools. And so if you look at some of our schools, these are our high schools as it relates to our BRT system. And so I'm the father of 4 kids, and when they got a bus pass, that was their ticket to freedom. And so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It kept them from using the car. But I remember my son had to go to summer school. He's an East student, and he had to go to Memorial, and it was just almost impossible for him. And here he would have 15-minute access, to get to Memorial High School. Stops right in front of Memorial, stops right in front of East. And then you couple that with Madison College and UW-Madison, because many students take, I want to say, advanced courses, and they take them at colleges. And this just provides students excellent access to educational opportunities. One thing that we're very cognizant of is how are we serving our communities of color? And this is a graphic that shows our lines, and each orange dot represents 5 households of color. And so you can see how we are trying to touch communities of color to make it so that they have excellent access to downtown and to our employment districts. BRT does have economic benefits. Now I'm going to pick the best example, but there are other examples. I think the oldest, or one of the older BRT corridors, is a 9-mile. It's called the Health Line, and it's in Cleveland, Ohio. It was on Euclid Avenue. It was, I'm going to say, it was a rundown corridor, but it represented $9.5 billion in economic development along the corridor. And so this one has the highest return on investment in any public transit project in the nation, $190 for every transit dollar invested. So, $9.5 billion, that's a hard number to get my head around. So I compared it to the city operating budget, because right now we're in the middle of the city operating budget. How many city operating budgets? It's 26 years worth of city operating budgets, So we're not the same as Cleveland. We're a much smaller city, but we do have potential. There's opportunities for us to do good things. This is just a study from APTA, which is a kind of a transit advocacy organization. It basically says that for every dollar that you invest in public transportation, you get $4 back. So what is bus rapid transit? It's direct routes and fewer stops. It's frequent all-day service. So it goes from 6 in the morning to 12 at night. So it becomes a real transportation option for service workers and people that have jobs that have non-traditional hours. We try and make it fast, not because buses are going fast, but because we have bus-only lanes, and so they're separated from congestion. They're branded stations and buses. They're given transit signal priority, and then we look at trying to have a faster fare payment system. So this is one just rendering of what the bus rapid transit would look like on Mineral Point Road. This is an island. Our particular system that we're proposing, we're actually going to have a multi-use path on the north side of Mineral Point, and our bus lanes will go down the center. We may not paint them fully red for the full length, just so you know. This is one by Brt Stevens, and so we have several stops along the Cap East district. They'll be running along the center, and so you think about all the households and everything that are in Cap East, and them having, I think here it's 7.5 minute service, to downtown, to State Street, and the like. This will become, this could become a preferred way of just getting around the city because it's so convenient and so frequent. So the downtown routing, this is what we are proposing. We are proposing to have BRT on three blocks of State Street, 100 to 300 blocks, and around the Capitol Square. If we look at State Street itself, here you can see that we have the M's represent all the metro stops that are along State Street. The blue ones have shelters, the gray ones do not have shelters. We will route BRT on the 100 to 300 block, and then it's likely that routes west of Gorham will be removed from State Street. So the BRT routing and State Street in the BRT routing it's really been a consistent. It was kind of identified in the 2013 Madison Transportation Corridor Study. It was in the 2013 Transit Development Plan. It was referenced in the 2018 City of Madison Plan, and all of these plans had, the BRT routing on State Street and along the square. We did take a deeper look into it. We looked at option 1, option 1A, option 2, and option 3. We presented it to several meetings. They were held at the senior center. Some were in the fall. And then we had to, after we had them in the fall, we had to go back and look at it some more. And then we kind of released it in January of 2020. It was pretty, we felt like we tried to capture many different viewpoints. It went through the committee structure, the Disability Rights Committee, TPPB, TC, DCC, all these other committees. And this, the downtown routing report, along with the locally preferred alternative, was approved in March of 2020, and there's the legislative number. Between March of 2020 and I'm going to say fall of 2020, there was a desire to, rather than have side running stations, that perhaps we could have center running, and this would reduce the number of stations. It could reduce the number of impacts to adjacent businesses. And so we did switch, I'm going to say 60% of the route to center running. The routing itself really didn't change, but where we located the stations did change. And so we went back for confirmation in January of 2021 for the center running. Because the route was essentially the same, the FTA, wasn't as interested. So, one reason why is State Street, why has it been part of the plan really since 2013? And it's really because it goes where people want to go. It's State Street's a place. It's not, and people want to go there. It provides access to the visible and cultural center of the city. You think about it, we have 3 museums right there, performing arts center, retail, and restaurants. It's a great place. It's station and people oriented, and there's enough space for stations and people. It's free from most traffic delays. And then it's fast and direct rather than circuitous. And the idea with bus rapid transit isn't so much that we want fast buses. It's just that we want buses to go the most direct route, and so that they don't make turns, and so that a trip that takes an hour in a car, we don't want it to take an hour and 10 minutes in a bus. We would like them to be more competitive. And so we would like to use direct routes and give them priority in the streets. So what is the transit use on State Street? About 950 people per weekday boarded stops that would be consolidated on the State Street BRT station. So it's basically the upper State Street stops. And it's about 250,000 people per year. Okay. And then many times more pass through the State Street on the bus and see the opportunities. So, here's people. I've actually kind of been walking State Street and just talking to people in the bus stops. And I just asked them, why are you here? Why are you using this stop? This was this weekend. On the left, those are 2 sisters. They lived right off of Henry Street, and they were visiting. In the middle, the person that's sitting down, she's worked on State Street for 15 years, and she uses the bus every day to get to and from work. The person that's standing is a vet. The people on the right, they live on an apartment on top of one of the State Street businesses. I've talked to other people. Last week there was it's interesting. It was kind of a preschool or a daycare school that had 12 students, and they were on State Street, all with their same colored T-shirts, and they were going from State Street to actually Schrader Road. People. These are just ordinary people that want to do stuff on State Street. So if we compare, boarding, sometimes you think, well, do that many people really ride, the bus, and how does it compare to people in the cars? And so we just compared, well, how many people entered our garages, on Upper State Street and the Capitol, and how many people boarded on the square and how many people boarded on the State Street. And more people entered our garages, than boarded Metro, but not that many. I mean, you think about it, our our occupancy or the number of people that entered our garages was 4,100, and the people boarding the bus was 3,100. So, State Street contributes a significant amount of people, going to, the square and State Street. And then this one is on the square, but I included it because it's such a great picture of rain, right? And this is, the shelters are important because sometimes it rains and people, like to be out of the rain. And so what we like to do on our stations, to the extent possible, is provide some space so that if it's in bad weather, people have a place to wait that's a little bit more comfortable. So at this point, I think I'm going to turn it over to Justin. And then, Justin, would you like me, I guess, why don't you tell me when to advance? Is that okay?
Okay. Sounds good. Good evening, everyone. Justin Schoenberg, General Manager at Metro Transit. For those of you I haven't met, I've been here just a little bit over a year, so I don't have the full depth of history that Tom has, but I did in my previous job was building a bus rapid transit line and did finish one. So there are some elements here that I can speak to. So first, I want to talk a little bit about the stop locations, where these stations would go. Much has been discussed around that we're adding these giant stations. I just want to emphasize that we're actually reducing the total number of stations. And then as we get to the renderings here in a minute, I'll show you what those stations will look like in comparison to the existing. But what this is showing is where the existing, as Tom mentioned in that previous slide, where the existing bus stops are. The circles in red are what's proposed currently for the BRT stations. And the circles in green are essentially the other options that we've shown. But essentially all of the other locations would go away most likely as we go through the network redesign. And so we're actually reducing the total footprint of stations on the corridor. Tom, if you want to go to the next one. Oh, there we go. Okay, you want to advance to the next? So again, I want to remind everyone that State Street is a primary transit hub or corridor right now. We do have a lot of bus service on State Street. We've got a lot of overlapping routes, many of them coming, at the same time. And so, we have a lot of bus service on State Street right now, and absent any change would continue to do so. But as part of our planning for this effort, we are looking to significantly reduce the number of buses. So I just want to emphasize again, we're not adding BRT buses on top of the existing bus service in the corridor. We're actually replacing bus service with BRT, which will actually be a net reduction of total buses by 60% in the upper State Street section. And then actually in the lower State Street, we expect to reduce that entirely to zero. And so again, that will just, compared to existing conditions, and especially 2019, we'll actually see fewer buses. One note, I think a couple of people brought up the bigger buses. I just want to emphasize those are no wider or taller than the existing buses that are out there today. They are 20 feet longer, but that does allow us to run fewer of them. They can carry about twice as many people. And so I think there was a question asked around, are those really necessary? I would say yes. We need that capacity in order to carry the number of people that want to use transit. And actually, before the pandemic, had many issues of people getting passed by because there just wasn't physically room for them to fit on the bus. And so, we need that extra capacity to absorb that. And then if you want to go to the daily, it's a little bit less dramatic on the daily, but still a significant reduction in the total number of buses on State Street, both upper and lower. with the BRT plan than it would be with the existing condition. Go to the next. So again, this is another view of the proposed BRT station locations that we've talked about, and I'm going to kind of step through them one by one and show some renderings that we've done after we've talked with various property owners. But before I do that, general dimensions. So first, I want to make clear that the unobstructed sidewalk space, basically the area between the building front and the trees and light poles and whatever else, that area will stay unobstructed. Whatever pedestrian capacity that sidewalk had before, it will have in the future even with the BRT. So we are not constricting the sidewalk down to 5 feet. That clear zone for the sidewalk would stay. The stations would be built in what we call the terrace, which is kind of the area between the clear sidewalk space and the curb. And so we can fit these shelters the stations into that area without blocking the sidewalk. On that platform will be about 10 feet wide and about 50 feet long. That allows us to serve all of the doors of the bus. And it will be elevated slightly. So it'll be about 13 inches above street level, whereas the existing curb is 5 inches or so. So it's roughly 8 or 9 inches above the existing sidewalk level. So it's really just a single step up. But what that gets us is the ability to load and unload passengers at every door, including folks in wheelchairs and other mobility challenges at all doors. And it prevents us from having to deploy these ramps like this is showing, which is important because that takes a lot of time. And so when we deploy ramps, not only does it add time to the passenger's journey, that they have to spend for the ramp to deploy and be pulled back in. It also makes it really difficult for us to keep our schedules. And so, as you can imagine, with a bus coming every 5 minutes, which it's when one bus is delayed by 2 minutes for one of these wheelchair ramps to load and unload, it really throws our schedule out of whack and makes it difficult to maintain schedule reliability throughout the entire system, not just on State Street. Now you go next. So I'm going to walk through fairly quickly these various options and the different renderings that we've done. We've shown these to many of the stakeholders along the street. And I'm trying to show this to you just to see the scale of what exists today versus what we're proposing in the future, as well as what we've already done to compromise with adjacent building owners and users. So first, this is the full-size station design. If we were to plot that down, as you can see, it is significantly larger than what the previous shelter was. While we're able to maintain quite a bit of transparency, it's not, it's not as much as desired, especially on a street this size. So if you go to the next one. So this is what it would look like with the existing shelter, just shifted a bit on that new platform. Again, everything behind the station, the clear sidewalk space, is maintained as it was before. Go to the next one. And then this is a version with the new shelter design that is sized to be the same size as the existing shelter. So in this scenario, we're shifting the shelter slightly, but it is no bigger, and it's just a new design. The next one. So this is a similar example. Tom, if you just want to step through these. This is with the existing shelter. This is with the new version of the shelter. Similarly here, this is near the corner of Johnson and State. This is what it would have looked like with a full-size, unaltered station. This is with the existing shelter, and then with the modified version of the shelter. This is right across the street on Johnson. Existing shelter with the platform, and new version of the shelter. Going to the 300 block in front of Triangle Market here. existing condition with an existing shelter placed there and with a new version of a shelter placed there. And then at the Gorham end of the 300 block, again, existing condition, this shelter exists today. This is what it would look like on a platform. And then with the new shelter design. You can go on to the next one.
Go to the next one.
So now I'd like to talk a little bit about schedule and project budget. I know some of this has been brought up, but I just want to kind of put a fine point on it. So we were recommended about a little over a month ago for an $80 million grant for our project. There were only a handful, actually 6 projects that were recommended for funding. We were one of those 6. As you can see from this list, these are all the other agencies that applied. So there's a strong competition for these dollars, and these dollars are not infinite. I think we're fortunate to have been recommended for this project because I think we have a strong project, and we were recommended for this funding, which is a big win for us and allows us to move the project forward. If we go to the next one. But schedule is critical for us. So we're in what's called project development right now. I know there's a lot going on here, but I'll explain it a little bit. Our plan is to start construction near the middle to end of 2022. That will allow us to open for service in 2024 in the summertime, which is when we do all of our major service changes. We are about 6 months into our environmental study that's necessary to meet this schedule. That environmental study takes about a year, roughly, and we're about halfway through it, roughly 6 months into it. A change at this point in the game does reset the clock on that environmental study. We would need to essentially go back and start over, starting that environmental study. Best case, that delays us 6 months. However, keep in mind, we're in Madison, we're in winter. We aren't going to open a BRT line when it's 0 degrees outside. And so in reality, that actually pushes us a year out for a delay in our opening service. I would say that's best case scenario. That's assuming that a change is made today and adopted by the council and locally preferred alternative. Most likely that would take much, much longer. And so, I think it's fair to say that any change to the alignment and routing at this point would add at least a year, if not 2, to the project schedule. But the other piece that I just want to point out too is that, our plan requires state collaboration. We're running on a state highway, US 151, for much of the corridor. And it will be required that we have an interlocal agreement with the state that they sign off on before we start construction. And so I think for a lot of reasons, it's important for us to realize that there's a gubernatorial election in 2022, and it's important that we have that state support. And if we don't, it's very likely that the project could go away entirely. So I just want to emphasize that point. I don't want to be overly dramatic about it, but it's real because I think we all understood what happened to some projects back in 2010. You can go to the next one. So again, just to reiterate and recap how we've already made modifications to respond to concerns as best we can. Again, recognizing that the State Street corridor was selected by the council and reaffirmed again this past year. We do want to respond to business owners and other entities along the corridor to make sure that we can minimize that impact while still bringing more people to State Street, but minimize the direct impact of those businesses. And so, the BRT project, we've committed to moving to a mostly electric fleet, which will reduce the noise compared to what's there today. We've reduced the bus shelter size to what is essentially the same size as the shelter that's there today. We've shifted and modified the design of the shelters to make them more transparent, even than the existing shelters that exist today, so that any window visibility is no more impacted than the existing shelter would be. We are not impacting through sidewalk space or any area that's been used for street dining or other vending. We're reducing the total number of stations from 10 down to 2. We're reducing the total number of buses, again, by 30 to 60%, depending on the time of day. And we are most likely, again, this is pending the route redesign, the network redesign project, but at least at this point, our staff recommendations are that the buses on Lower State Street be removed because that we do have a path to bypass Lower State Street without adding travel time, unlike Upper State Street. To go to the next.
I think that's it, Justin.
Okay. Thank you all. We're happy to take questions.
Thank you, Tom and Justin. I just wanted to highlight and clarify 2 things, President Abbas. And the first is on that question of the network redesign that Justin just mentioned. The reason that there are asterisks next to that every time you see it is that I wanted us to be 100% clear that that is a thing in process. The council hasn't seen that yet. And I obviously don't want to speak for the council and what you might approve. Right now, as Justin said, the staff proposals do show rerouting buses off the 400 through 600 block of State Street. It's possible that through the committee process and when we come to council approval that could change. Again, I don't want to get ahead of you all in what we're saying, right? So we're trying to be really sensitive to that process and your role in it. And then the other thing that I just wanted to make sure to clarify, Justin showed you a number of options for stations, for BRT stations on State Street. And I just want to be 100% clear that we are only looking for one on each side of the street, right? And we've developed a bunch of alternatives in the process of listening to business owners and trying to address their concerns. And so that's why you see so many pictures. But I think at this point, the staff recommendation would be for the stop on the 200 block at Johnson and the 300 block at Gorham, the closest to those streets. So I just wanted, because I know that those maps and those pictures can be a little confusing. And I just wanted to clarify those 2 things for folks. And I know that Tom and Justin and myself would all be happy to answer questions if the committee members have them.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Question for the staff. Well, I can start some questions if that's okay. Same question, Justin and Tom, for both of you, that I asked to Tiffany about community outreach, and especially about proposed changes. What type of communication has been done and engagement with the community, especially with the stakeholders at State Street?
So I can take a little bit of this, but we'll need to pass it to Tom. I think, and again, I can't speak for what was done prior to my arrival, but I do know that, over the last several months, as we've dived into these questions about stations, we've had several virtual meetings convened by various groups, including Tiffany. We've met with individual property owners and stakeholders. Tom, in particular, has been out knocking on doors, talking to people, making phone calls on a regular basis. And so, we've certainly made every effort to communicate and talk with everyone through this process. But Tom, I don't know if you want to add there.
I think we've had, I want to say, State Street's been a bus corridor for 40 years. And so when I started before the pandemic, people were saying, could we get fewer buses on State Street? I remember sitting in Mayor Soglin's office saying, what can we do, to get some buses off of State Street? So this is not a new thing. But what is new is that we've started to implement strategically ways to address the owners, State Street owners' comments. And for instance, this summer we're putting in a bus lane on West Washington. Well, that actually took a little bit of advocacy legislatively to get that put in. But the specific purpose for that was so that we could address these concerns. Similarly, in May, the workshops, there was some transit network design workshops, and they didn't have to route all of the local buses off of State Street. In fact, when we did our report in 2019, we assumed that some would stay on State Street. But because of the concerns that we've continued to have are here, we said, all right, no, let's take all of our local service and take it off State Street, because this is what we've been hearing. And that includes, I can tell you, we've had meetings at the senior center, and I'm going to say they were spirited discussions. That's why we released a report in November, and then we have to re-release it in January. It's not because everyone was on the same page. It's because we had to study it more and interact more. So I think the extent that we can, we've said, all right, we are going to just put our premium service on State Street and take everything else off and try and address these.
Let me try and ask President Abbas's question in a slightly different way. I know that you have numbers of how many public meetings we've had on the BRT project and how many interactions we've had, and in addition to the work that you've done to reach out to individual stakeholders, can you put some quantification on that?
I'm sorry. I must have been going off on something that wasn't.
I have that number here, Tom. There's been over 14 general public meetings and at least 7,000 individual contacts and response.
This is a summary of the phase 2 public engagement. So we've had several public engagements, and it talks about the responses, the listservs, project contacts, mobile engagement stages, public meetings. This just goes till 2019. So I'll stop that sharing, and we could provide a similar document for, I guess we're in phase 3 right now. So there's been, just this year, there's probably been maybe 4 meetings, would you say, Justin, of public engagement meetings this year?
And just to clarify, Tom and Justin, that's just the special public engagement meetings, right? In addition, when we were approving the routing, it went through the normal committee process, and we had opportunity for public comment at all of those committee meetings, and then at council when it was approved, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
All right. President Abbas, does that answer your question?
Yes, that answered my questions. I was really interested in hearing, especially about State Street outreach, and especially with those modifications, how much effort has been put for engaging that stakeholders.
And so, Tom, I think you've been at the bid board meetings multiple times, and also at the downtown coordinating committee. Is that correct?
Earlier we were at the downtown coordinating committee. We recently gave a presentation to the bid board. I think we have been, I'm going to put it in respond mode, in that we've been trying to hear things, ask our engineers to change things, and then interact directly with those most effective. And so I'm going to say over the last 2 weeks, most of our meetings have been individual. 1, so that we could hear their concerns, and then 2, so we could get feedback on concept ideas. I think we've met with 12 different owners, perhaps.
Thank you, Tom. And my next question is for you, Justin. So today I was on a straight street, and Tom was very generous to show me some of the proposed bus stops, and the size looks really substantial. I'm just curious about the platform and the proposed platform beside the shelter itself, and especially about the sizing. I know you mentioned about handicap accessibility and how it's impact the timing, but I'm curious why we had such a big platform on a straight street.
Sure. So yeah, I guess first, just to emphasize, the shelter itself would be no bigger than the existing shelter. So it's really just the platform that we're talking about here that would get enlarged. And that's essentially just a raised sidewalk that's about one step up from the regular sidewalk. But what that does for us, the reason that we invest in these stations in this way are, primarily safety. It allows us to, minimize some of these step up and step down, which will impact those, especially, again, those with mobility challenges. It also allows them and everyone else to board more quickly so that bus is not sitting there at the station for as long. And we can keep our schedule intact, and we can stay on schedule and not bunch up those buses. And then, lastly, just that the accessibility piece, can't be understated. This is something where, we have a large number of people who have mobility challenges using our services. And even the existing service presents a lot of challenges for those who don't have, easy mobility. And so by preparing these station platforms in a way that really makes it easy, or as easy as possible for those folks to board and get off the buses, I think we can benefit them for sure and speed up their lives, but also everyone else, because they have to wait for that to happen. So all that is to say, I think the last point that I'll make is just consistency across the system. In every other location in the BRT in these 15 miles, people can expect to just step out the back door and be on a level platform. And I think we should be concerned about a situation where that's not the case for somewhere, kind of at random in the middle of the system. And so creating that consistency is important, so that people don't step out of the bus expecting one thing and get another.
Just to be clear, the length of the Metro Rapid buses is at 60 feet.
Right.
So these are 60-foot buses, and what we're showing is 50-foot platforms. And so, although one of your questions was why the length of the platform, and I think, Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the answer is the platforms are 50 feet so that every door of the bus can access that platform, and in part, as Justin says, for accessibility, and in part for ease of rapidly moving people off of and onto the buses. And if you have each door on the platform, that's actually literally part of the definition of bus rapid transit.
Yeah. And there are certain requirements that we have to meet from FTA's standpoint to be classified as bus rapid transit. But yeah, to your point, the bus is 60 feet, the platform's only 50. And that's because that rear door is not all the way at the end of the bus. It's about 10 to 15 feet forward of the rear end of the bus.
And in other ways, there will be no way to decrease that platform to reduce the impact. To find some sort.
Not that I can see.
Okay. And one more question about FDA funding. So as you mentioned, there is a 1 year for environmental assessment. And as I'm aware, you submit that environmental assessment and you get the reward from FDA. And after then, if just from process standing point of view, I want to understand if we decide to move the station to Gorham or other places, what will happen then after we get a reward? Can we do it, or we cannot do it? We have to go back. Like, how does that work with FDA?
After the funding has been awarded, at that point, the project has locked in. You can't make substantial changes at that point. so there's the two pieces. There's the environmental study, which again, any change would have to restart the environmental study. But we won't be able to get the federal grant, lock in the federal grant until that environmental study is done, and that study will be referenced in the grant. Then we can't make changes to it from that point.
So would it be a possibility for us as a city to do environmental study on Gorham and other places as well we are doing here, just to keep our options open in case if we want to move to different place, so at least we don't impact the timeline?
No, honestly, you can't segment an environmental study because basically it's called segmentation. They can't separate pieces to try to advance one piece without advancing the other. It really has to be an all-encompassing report covering the whole project.
And also for clarity, and probably that already been some order know, but for my personal clarity, did we hire a third party to do environmental assessment, or is this something City of Madison staff is doing?
Yes, that's being done by a consultant.
Being done by consultant, and consultant told you that it will take 1 year at least to finish the environmental assessment.
So it's all done. So there's been a schedule created and reviewed with FTA and kind of signed off on. I say about a year. It could vary anywhere from 10 to 16, 18 months, depending on the specific conditions and the specific things being analyzed. But in this case, we're expecting approximately a year for this project. And again, that schedule was created by the consultant, reviewed by us, reviewed by FTA, and kind of signed off by all parties.
Okay, so just to wrap up this, which means if we go on East Gorham or any other street, we have to do environmental assessment, and that's where the fear is. It might take a long period of time and we will lose the funding.
Right, so essentially we have to start over the environmental study for the entire corridor because we're making a change in the corridor, right in the middle of the corridor. So obviously a lot of the legwork has been done for the other sections, but from a process standpoint, we would have to start over. And unfortunately, it's not just all about doing an amount of work. It's very process oriented where certain reviewers, like at the state level, you have to provide one submittal and then they get 30 days to review and comment on it. And you revise and then resubmit and they have another 30 days to comment on. And so it's not just about doing the work, it's also just going through that process again. And we basically have to start over at the beginning.
So during downtown events like farmers market or other events, would it will be still accessible, or would we have to reroute it our BRT?
We've in our application directly, we let them know that we detoured off the square, frequently on weekends, and on State Street less frequently, and so we were pretty transparent in our application for that. We will be putting in temporary stops on the outer loop for, the farmers markets and the like. The FTA is pretty cautious on how much they want those stops to be built out, you might say. But they have approved us having temporary stops on the outer loop for farmers market. And we might just use if we really don't detour off of State Street as frequently. And if we did, we would kind of use a normal bus stop or maybe do a posted bus stop, something.
So my follow-up question would be for the temporarily stop during those events. Do they have platform for handicap accessibility?
No, they would not.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for addressing my question, and thanks, Alder, for your patience. Alder Haley, please go ahead.
Thanks everyone for calling in, and thank you, Tom, Justin, and the mayor for some of the clarification. I can't ignore hearing from all these constituents, over 100, emails or even testimonial that really send in their concerns about this project in State Street. And, it's like, there's completely two different stories. And I just want to put the spot, on Justin and the mayor and Tom in giving us the clarification. What went wrong? What was the theme of tonight's conversation was there was no transparency, there was no communication, and there was no collaboration in State Street. And as a city, if we want to really thrive, we need to help those businesses in State Street. So I'm wondering what went wrong in terms of communication and in terms of transparency. And I know, the city has done some focus, research or outreach to different communities, but I'm just wondering specifically to State Street businesses, what was that kind of outreach and what kind of outreach was there and what was the outcome? Thank you.
Alder, I think if you really want to know what went wrong, you should speak to your colleagues who declined to support State Street last year. I think that was a lot of what went wrong. But I honestly, the outreach done on this project has been more extensive than most infrastructure projects that the city does. And there has been outreach directly to downtown stakeholders, including most recently, as Tom said, multiple one-on-one meetings, which is again more than we usually do for infrastructure projects. I think we as a city always struggle with getting the word out to everyone who might be impacted by something. I'm sure you experience that in your district. I know other alders do. And all we can do is continue to try our best to reach people where they are. But my experience is that even our best is often not received. And that, our communication methods today are so segmented, and people live in little media bubbles. It's very hard to reach people. But there's been, I think, extensive media coverage on this. We have reached out through listservs, through organizations, through our own social media, through our own website, through press releases. We have a consultant contract that's specifically dedicated to outreach on this project. So I don't want you to leave tonight with the impression that we haven't been trying, Alder. I think there's been a significant amount of effort that's gone in to outreach on this project, and particularly outreach to downtown stakeholders. And I also think that it's important to acknowledge that, everyone here believes the same thing about State Street, right? We all believe that State Street is important and is in fact one of the hearts of our city, and should be treated as such. Where we differ is, and I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I personally believe that something as important as State Street and as important as the Capitol Square must be served by transit. We must bring people to our downtown via transit and get them to the places that they want to go. But there's no disagreement on the importance of downtown and State Street. I think that our city would be very ill served if we didn't route transit through where people want to be, which is downtown and State Street. It looks like Tom has an additional response to your question.
Yeah, and I'll be brief about it. There's no alternative that does not have an impact, right? That any alternative that was looked at the report had, took considerable amount of parking, placed stations in different areas, right? And so it'd be nice to say that, we could have a $160 million project and not cut down a tree and have no impact, but there is some impact. I think what the mayor said is that, we wanted to serve the heart of our cultural city. And so that's the reason why 3 blocks of the 8 blocks of State Street, we've selected BRT to be on it. But, we have taken, all these mitigative measures like the local service off. And in 2019-20, we weren't talking about taking the local service off. We are now. So I think we've tried to be responsive. I think right now there's just a desire that no bus service beyond State Street. I think that's a current desire, but State Street's been a transit corridor for 40 or 50 years. And the FTA helped build part of State Street. So those are just factors that are in the background as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alder Healy. Alder Bennett.
Hi. So, in the spirit of time and wanting to be mindful of everyone's time, I want to just limit my questions to 3 for right now. So my first question is, you touched on this, but can you hear me? I know a number of people called in to request for the BRT line to be moved to the intersection of West Johnson and West Gorham. And I would like to hear you speak specifically about that, whether on how that is or isn't a viable or optimal option for the BRT line.
I might be able to show some slides that help understand the constraints of Johnson Gorham more clearly. Here's a.
Tom, while you're getting that up, Alder, I just want to. Justin did speak to one aspect of that, right? Which is any change in the current routing requires a restart of the process. So that's sort of thing 1. But then Tom can speak to the actual physical constraints.
So there's just not 10 feet there. There's not 10 feet there. There's not 10 feet there. There's just not room there. And so, we would start the process over. We'd have to come up with a different route, and then just physically, how do you fit, a 10 or 12 foot station in these places? So.
Mm-hmm. That would require removing the parking, correct?
Well, perhaps more than that.
Yeah, Alder, it would at a minimum require moving the parking for the station itself, but then you'd have the buses stopping in the middle of traffic. And blocking. So essentially you'd be taking either Johnson or Gorham down to 1 lane.
Okay. That's great. I thank you for that. And second, I'm particularly concerned about removing buses on the lower end of State Street. This might be counterintuitive to what some other people think. But as a student that has throughout the campaign consistently heard that, people want more buses, actually, especially late night buses. And I've had my fair share of nights where I did not want to walk home. So how does that factor in to the current BRT stations? Will people that are getting out from a late night of partying be able at the bars, be able to use other forms of public transportation
Alder, I share your concern, having ridden the 4 and the 6 many, many times in my previous job. And I've raised that concern with staff multiple times. I would say a couple of things. Firstly, just on the bus rapid transit system, we've always envisioned it turning down the Johnson-Gorham pair. So it was never intended for the rapid transit to go all the way down State Street. So that's sort of one conversation, right? The other conversation is the network redesign. And as I said earlier, at this point, the staff alternatives are showing a different routing of buses to serve that area, Langdon campus area, without them going down State Street. But that's by no means decided yet. It has to go through the committee process and ultimately to the council. So I would encourage you to engage in that process, and I'm sure staff would be happy to meet with you and talk you through it. I personally would be very interested in your opinion as the representative of that area, what you think of the proposed routings and how they would in particular serve students, in particular at night. That's obviously a safety concern. And one of the things that I actually find really appealing about the bus rapid transit system is that it will go much later in the evening than the current buses do. Not than the 80, 81, 82 system, right? But the mainline buses. So it will allow folks to get down to the campus area and downtown, and back and forth much later in the evening, and I think provide a much safer alternative. But it is very important how that then interacts with the rest of the system and what's available for people to reach different areas of campus. So, but that's really sort of a separate conversation as part of the network redesign, and again, one that I'd really encourage you to engage with.
Definitely. So I'll definitely have to engage with that offline. Thank you. Question number 3. So something that State Street businesses also frequently mentioned is a vision for the pedestrian mall. And I know that there's concerns with if that is even feasible for State Street. So I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts about that, about not necessarily the pedestrian mall concept, but the concept of how BRT, if we put it on State Street, will impact that vision.
Yeah, thank you, Alder. It's a really good question, and a complicated one. As I think, sorry, I can't remember if it was Tom or Justin that referenced this earlier, but the FTA actually helped us build State Street as it is once upon a time, on the condition that it remain a transit corridor. So if we were to remove transit from the entire corridor, there would be a financial impact to the city. So we'd have to wrestle with that decision if we wanted to move forward with that. There's also just the question of what practically, and again, not speaking to the pros and cons of a pedestrian mall at all, just to the practical considerations around that. One of the very important practical considerations is public safety access and maintaining the fire lane. One of the beautiful things about State Street and the surrounding blocks is that there's no parallel service, right? There's no parallel street to State Street. And so, in a lot of other situations where you remove vehicles, you can do that because there's enough parallel service that you could get an emergency vehicle in. But for State Street, we would have to maintain that fire lane, which then limits how much of the space can actually be used for other things, and including limits our ability to put things in what now would be sort of the middle of the street, right? You'd have to maintain that clearance. So you don't actually gain that much space by closing it to transit. And then, again, just practically from an infrastructure point of view, it's not that long ago that we redid State Street, and we wouldn't anticipate, doing a full reconstruct of the street. And Tom, you might actually have the specific number of years, but I think it's many years out before we would normally do a full reconstruct of State Street. Isn't that right?
Yeah, the State Street was reconstructed in the early 2000s. And normally you'd want to see at least a 40-year life out of something. It was constructed, it cost about $15 million to reconstruct then. So, today, in today's dollars, I'm going to say 25, and, there's a queue of projects like Atwood Avenue, Shanks Corners, Park Street, John Nolan Drive, that are kind of in line. Everyone kind of waits their turn to get their reconstruction dollars. And so it'd be difficult to kind of bump a portion of State Street to the front of the queue, if you know what I mean.
Right. So it's both a significant cost and probably a significant time frame to do a reconstruct of State Street. To be clear, for anything, right? Just as a project, regardless of what that project then would look like. Does that answer your question, Alder?
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alder Bennett. Alder Haley.
Thank you, President Abbas. Just to follow up with the mayor's comment, when you say there's a financial implication, can you elaborate what that looks like?
Yeah, Tom, you might have the numbers off the top of my head. It's like 100,000. Is that right?
Yeah, there's kind of two things that would be two things that would have to be refunded. One would be $1 million for the capital costs that were used to construct a portion of State Street, and then we get about $100,000 of running way dollars annually, and those end up being operating dollars. And so, if we remove buses from state, then we kind of lose that $100,000. Which some people could say, well, that's not that much, but if you go through our operating budget procedure, it's really a lot. It's like a half a route. So, that's the ballpark of what it would be.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alder Haley. I have one quick question for you, Tom or Justin. So, just thinking creatively, I know there is some risk attached to it, as you guys mentioned about FTA funding, but I'm thinking about West Gorham and Johnson. There is a Buckeye parking lot. I think so it's owned by city. Have ever we checked if we can use that as a BRT route, having a station there rather than State Street?
Although it's above State Street.
Yes, I know, but it's on West Gorham Street. I'm just thinking about as a staff, have we check other options, or we were just we need to go on a State Street?
I think, we have bus stops on State Street. And so we're thinking, we'll use kind of the stops that we have on State Street. And we'll actually have fewer buses at those stops. So we'll have 30% more. And so I think the staff thought in the planning is that, as it went the 3 blocks, we would use one of the existing stops that currently exist on State Street.
I think, Tom, the Alder's question was slightly bigger than that. and more a question about routing. Is that correct, Alder? And I think you'd have to go back, Tom. I don't remember the year that was it 2013 that we first started developing the routing.
Yeah. So the MPO developed the routing that essentially we're using in 2013. It was kind of reconfirmed in the downtown routing report in 2019. And if you look at that report, the station locations are roughly where the existing station locations are on State Street. I think Mike Chickvala made the graphic, and so made the oval a little bit bigger so that he could adjust it, 50 feet one way or the other.
But at the time that the MPO started this process, I assume they considered a number of different routings.
Mm-hmm. Madam Mayor, I was trying to see, because I know there are two things happening if we don't go to BRT. Number one is on East Gorham, we need to see more than a 10-feet space. Second is FBA funding is going to be affected. I was more curious if staff had looked into that Buckeye lot, if we want to go on East Gorham that have more space, and I think so owned by City of Madison. So if we look into more creatively on that same route on Johnson and East Gorham and see if we can find more than 10 feet and think out creatively.
Yeah, Alder, I understand, but you would need to change the whole routing to use the Buckeye lot, basically, and it would preclude it probably being a parking lot.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, we were just at the Buckeye route on Sunday.
Because it is east of State Street, Alder, the buses won't run by that part of the street.
Yeah, that was my recollection. I'm checking on the map right now, but it seems like the Buckeye is like east of Hopcat, and so the buses wouldn't run by it.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Alder McKinney.
Thank you very much. I have two questions. The first one is to the mayor, and then the second one is to Tom. Mayor, when you were responding to Alder Healy, and I wasn't really clear of the connection with BRT. You said Alder's not supporting the downtown businesses, and so I was not clear on that link with the selection of the BRT down State Street. So if you would help me to understand what that linkage and that connection that you were making, I think I missed it.
Absolutely, Alder. There is no direct connection, but I think that many of our State Street businesses are understandably deeply resentful of our failure as a city to support them in their hour of need. And if you remember, Alder Rivera and I made several proposals to make funding available to State Street businesses that the council failed to adopt. And I think that has made life harder for our State Street businesses.
Oh, okay, and I got that part, but I was the piece that I was missing is how that was linked to the selection of the routing of.
It's not, Alder.
Okay,
it's not linked to the selection of the routing. What it's linked to is the feeling, I think, legitimate feeling from many State Street businesses that the city is not doing what we should to address their needs.
Okay, thank you very much. Then my next question is to Tom. And Tom, in one of your slides, it showed the volume of ridership, and was the selection and looking at the BRT down State Street specifically for the routing volume and why that was selected and something another location was not selected?
Ridership may have played a factor into it. I mean, there are 250,000 people that board on Upper State Street, so that's not a small amount. And we have these bubble maps, and you can see the bubbles. But I think part of it is that we want to touch things that are very important to the city. And if you think about like the Overture Center, that's very important. You think about the museum, those two museums on the corner at the top, those are very important. You think about Momoka, those are very important. And then you think about, I want to say, the very unique shopping experience that you get when you walk down. You don't get that experience in many places in the city. There are some places. I'm an East Sider. There's some cool places on the East Side and some cool places on the West Side. But like State Street's really important, and it's just to bypass it. It seems like if you bypass, I just have to be cautious on how we say it. We want it accessible to people that don't have cars, and we want people that don't have cars to be able to see some of the stuff that's on State Street, and not to ride around it. And so that's just some of the factors that went into it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alder McKinney. Any question for the staff? Any discussion on the presentation? Alder Verveer.
Thank you very much, President Abbas. I really, really appreciate you providing this forum, particularly for State Street area stakeholders to be heard. I've had the opportunity to speak with many of you individually that serve on this committee and on the greater council. And I realize that I likely am perhaps all that's standing in the way of between all of you adjourning is myself. So I will try to only cover a couple of quick points that I just want to share with you. First and foremost, I do want to thank the several dozen speakers that you heard tonight. At last count, I believe there were over 100 registrants on this item, and obviously, overwhelmingly, they have grave concerns about what the future plans are for BRT on State Street. I also want to extend an invitation to each and every one of you and our many colleagues that aren't currently in this meeting that I am very interested in speaking with you individually if you'd like to take me up on that offer to discuss the history, how we got where we are today, and perhaps some potential future courses. I don't want to take the time because I know you are probably on the verge of adjourning after being here over 3 hours now. But to simply tell you, kind of welcome to my world. I've had the honor and privilege of representing much of State Street for a very long time in City Hall. And I join our friends and colleagues here, older persons, Bennett and Heck, in representing certain different blocks of State Street today. So I have been involved in the downtown routing decisions regarding BRT, of course, from the very beginning, given my tenure here. And I know the mayor said it, referred to it as a trope, but I do want to very respectfully beg to differ and say that this is not revisionist history. I remember quite clearly city staff, and I would include Tom Lynch, former Deputy Mayor Leslie Arantia, Transportation Planner Mike Chuckvallo, former Transportation Planner David Trowbridge, saying to me in meetings that the initial approval of a local preferred route, which was approved by the Common Council on March 31st of 2020, could very well be revisited, would be revisited. Don't worry, this is only an initial step to get us in the pipeline for planning grant money from the FTA, Federal Transit Administration. I will point out, to my colleagues here, especially newer colleagues that weren't here in March of 2020, that my recollection is that was our very first virtual meeting at the beginning of the pandemic in our community. There were no registrants on the item, as I recall, and it was on the consent agenda and approved unanimously as part of the consent motion. Why was that? Because downtown stakeholders that were engaged were told that this was only, in essence, a baby step, that this could and would be revisited at a future date. The implementation wouldn't be till 2024. So it went through. Then the other resolution that Tom mentioned in his presentation, as we call it the center running resolution, was also approved in the midst of the pandemic unanimously, with perhaps some registrants relating to the west side issues of the east-west route. But as I recall, no discussion, consent agenda as well. That was on January 5th, 2021. Again, a Zoom meeting, but no downtown stakeholders were involved in that discussion at the council, because frankly, I don't recall any discussion taking place, certainly not about downtown routing. So that's the reality and what I was told in private meetings with city staff at the time. And I think the world of the staff, both those that are here currently and those that have left us, that started this conversation about downtown routing with me. I think said all that with the full faith that what they were saying was true. I don't think that any of us were purposely misled. But what happened was a pandemic got in the way. The conversation was never able to be continued with downtown stakeholders. Downtown stakeholders have been absolutely, brought to their knees in the last year plus because of the pandemic, and then the rioting that has victimized so many of them. So of course, they weren't engaged in BRT during the pandemic, and frankly, there was no outreach during the pandemic in between those two council resolutions. That apparently is what got us to the successful Small Start grant at the FTA. Small Start grant that you heard Justin refer to, the $80 million. So I don't want there to be any impression left here, perception at all, that these small mom and pop merchants and other State Street stakeholders all of a sudden are only paying attention because they've seen the visuals of potential stations on State Street. That's just not the case. In bid meetings, in DMI meetings, those that were in those meetings at the time have the same recollection. And you heard some of that in the testimony earlier today, that there would still be time to revisit the downtown routing. So with all that said, and taken at face value, because I have no way to say otherwise, that our $80 million grant wouldn't be in jeopardy, although I must admit the obvious that, hopefully the Biden administration, including Secretary Buttigieg, isn't going anywhere anytime soon, considering they're in their first few months still in office. But understanding the concern about WSDOT approval with Highway 151 and the Evers administration, hopefully being here much longer than some are worried that they might be. I get that. I get the concern that we're running out of time, that the environmental studies have begun and so forth, that they're well underway. So what I have been working toward, and staff knows this full well because we've had numerous conversations privately about this issue, is that if we can't revisit currently because of the federal grant and situation and the political leadership at the state level potentially leaving, then I think that we need to absolutely 100% get this station issue right. Everybody's in favor of BRT. Why have all of the votes at the Common Council, both with the previous council and the current council, been unanimous, including at our last council meeting where we had several BRT related resolutions on our agenda? It's because all of us policymakers strongly support BRT. All downtown stakeholders I've ever spoken with strongly support BRT. It's the issue of getting it right. State Street is in a very fragile situation. You heard the heartbreaking testimony tonight. Welcome to my world, where I hear the heartbreaking stories and have hours of conversations with these individual stakeholders. about what they've gone through and how they, to a person, do not want BRT on State Street. I can't put myself in their shoes. I can't put myself in the reality of being in their businesses every day and believing that, no, they don't actually have a lot of customers that arrive by mass transit to their shops, to their restaurants. But that's the perception on the street, is that, and I hate to say this, but it's true. I'm not making this up. The perception with all the stakeholders I have heard from is that BRT is really seen as a commuter express bus service traveling through State Street as if it's a thoroughfare, not as if it's a destination. I know that that is not the intent. I know the mayor passionately would beg to differ. She said it tonight. She said it in the press conference yesterday. I hope that that is true, that BRT really will help State Street overall. And I know that the mayor believes that to her heart and her fiber as a being, that BRT will help State Street. It would not hurt State Street. I'm afraid, though, that stakeholders just don't believe that. They don't buy that argument. But as I said, if we can't revisit the local preferred route because of this issue of timing, because of the issue of how far we've come with FTA and so forth, then I really just want to close by begging and pleading the mayor and the staff to continue the hard work of trying to figure out a station solution. The stations, the compromise that was shared by the mayor yesterday in the press conference is simply put unacceptable to the State Street stakeholders that I hear from. It just is. And it's so sad that we have unintentionally pitted one neighbor against each other. Forget the question of pitting Lower State Street against Upper State Street, where Upper State Street has vastly more locally owned small mom and pop unique shops and restaurants than Lower State Street does. It's geared more toward the student market and has a higher percentage of national chains, retailers, franchises, and so forth. But, based on the current status of where things are tonight, the impression is that this dream of one day having a more pedestrian and bicycle oriented State Street, something that, of course, the Wisconsin State Journal editorial board has been campaigning quite robustly on over the last many months, is all but a pipe dream for Upper State Street with BRT. And I get that. I realize that. That's why so many folks that don't have financial interests on State Street that have reached out to all of us, and certainly my downtown constituents have said, we'd much prefer a pedestrian mall on State Street than a transit mall, a BRT route there. So again, let me close by saying, I just beg all of us policymakers, the staff, to please continue to work hard and roll up our sleeves on trying to get this downtown station issue addressed in a satisfactory manner. I don't see why it has to, with BRT, when it's implemented in 2024, why these stations have to be the carte blanche, top of the line, primo size that is optimal for the transit system. Why don't we take the time, get it right? I won't share with you now my ideas for compromise. The staff know what they are. I have peppered the staff with questions. I had a very eye-opening conversation with staff, hearing what our consultants actually said is doable with the stations on State Street just last week. And I just believe in my heart that we absolutely can do better as it relates to the downtown station siting, what the design of the stations look like, because what was unveiled yesterday is not a compromise. It's not acceptable to myself. It's certainly not acceptable to the State Street stakeholders that I talk with. And it continues to sadly, give the perception, and I realize this is not the case, but the perception that we in City Hall don't care about State Street and the future of State Street. And it's just so heartbreaking. It's just so tragic. We're spending staff resources planning for the future, rightfully so, of East Town and West Town mall areas, when the heart of our city, the downtown, is what has suffered the most through the pandemic and the civil unrest. We really need to redouble our efforts in planning for the future of the greater State Street and downtown area. And I really appreciate, as I said at the outset, the number of my council colleagues that have reached out to me, that have had these conversations with me, and I invite any of the rest of you to do so as well. Thank you very much. Thank you again, President Abbas, for the opportunity, especially for the community to be heard tonight.
Thank you very much, Alder Veer. Alder Bennett.
Thanks so much, Alder Veer. That was really, I really appreciated your impassioned speech. And first off, I want to say that thank you for everyone for calling in. It's really cool to hear from our downtown businesses as someone that walks down State Street or skateboards down State Street on a near daily basis to get to my local hangout at Michelangelo's or indulge in ice cream at the chocolate shop. It's really kind of cool to hear from you. And I want you to know that you're definitely heard. And I share that concern about the length of or how large the stops are, especially in front of anthropology. But I don't want to go into that because I think that more conversations need to be had offline about that. But I want to focus right now on just the kind of option or compromise with moving the route to West Johnson and West Gorham. So for like my colleagues and those that are interested in doing that, I really think that's a bad idea. As someone that lived at the James my sophomore year, that street is extremely busy. It was extremely difficult for me to even navigate that street with my car. And I know that others have the same problem. It's, I think that adding BRT to that mix would be antithetical to the BRT, the whole purpose of BRT, which is to be rapid, not get caught up in traffic. And as was noted today, if we move that line to West Johnson and West Gorham, that would limit the street even more to one lane, which from my perspective, as you know, someone that lived down there and someone that that is on State Street a lot, I really don't think that's a good idea. And one other note for that is one of the important notes of the development of those large apartment buildings was the constant concern of flow during move-in. It's already hard enough to get into those buildings when we're moving in. Every year, it's a whole ordeal to move into those buildings. There's limited parking spaces and limited routes around with driving. So again, for those that are listening and for my colleagues that are looking into that option, I beseech you to understand that I don't think that's a great option for the BRT line.
Thank you, Alder Bennett. And I will just briefly speak on a few things. And Alder Veer, thank you very much for the detailed background. There is an underlying issue in City of Madison. And as you mentioned in March, because of pandemic, 2 resolutions went and we unanimously approved. We had a similar situation at Oscar Mayer on the north side of Madison, the district which I represent, when City of Madison employees apply for FDA grant and not a proper outreach was done on that particular project. And community at that time, because that project was important, and I am always pro for our transit system, but at the same time, that particular process for storing BRT buses and regular buses at creating a bus bond project in Oscar Mayer. Community basically reach out to federal government, FDA, and ask them proper outreach was not being done. So staff come back and they have to do a neighborhood meeting again. So the underlying issue is, I think, so we as a council, as well as we have worked collaboratively with the staff and try to make sure in future those big projects, either it's State Street, either it's Oscar Mayer, which is buses are moved to FedEx facility, they are not in Oscar Mayer. As part of discussion, just want to clear that. But those are the discussion we really need to make sure the stakeholders' voices can get heard in the process. And I am so much agree with you about finding a satisfactory compromise. And this is State Street belong to all of us. And it have a huge economic and social economic impact on whole community. I personally have seen a lot of European cities. I graduate my master degree in Maastricht in Holland, Netherlands, and I have seen a European way of lifestyle as well structured. Barcelona is an example where they create a grid system, taking the roads away from buses and from cars and giving the roads to pedestrian. So I see a huge opportunity for us to work collaboratively as a council with the staff, with the mayor office, and try to come across the possibility or solution. And I personally committed to work with Alder Veer and also city staff and move forward in a direction which is best for City of Madison. Well, thanks Alder Veer for your history and your input for your district. Thank you. Any further comments?
President Abbas, I just wanted to thank you for asking us to put this on the agenda for this special meeting. And I want to thank Tom and Justin for the work that they did to put the presentation together and their time here tonight. And to extend, again, the invitation to any of you or any of the council members. I know Tom has given personal tours to some alders of the BRT route, and I'm sure he would be happy to do that for others as well if you're interested. And I, of course, am happy to answer any questions or to have conversations with folks as we move this very important project forward. I know that we are all in agreement about how important rapid transit is for Madison's future and how an important an investment this will be for our transportation system. And I'm looking forward to, after 30 years, finally achieving a rapid transit system for Madison.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you all the staff for joining today and for the presentation and all the participants as well. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move adjournment.
Second.
It's moved and second. Thank you very much for joining today. Thank you. Have a nice evening.